How did it feel to hear a serious threat talk conversation about Canada becoming a state?
A lot of my family at home is like, honestly, if we could vote, I'd probably vote for it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, you won't get your universal health care.
He's trying to bring imperialism back. Like, that's the thing, right? That's the thing he likes, the idea he could acquire more land. He's just trying to normalize, so Canada, Greenland, he's like, that's great, right? So of course he's gonna be on the side of like, you know, blowing out the Gaza Strip and just the building, because like he wants imperialism to be back, because he's a monarch.
When I heard that ridiculous rhetoric of like, well, we'll just make Canada a state, it was like, part of me was like more libertarian, part of me was just like,
Yeah, borders are dumb.
Artist community is so disconnected from the fighter community that they can't even conceptualize what these people are like. Right. Like they probably view them as like very conservative, very bigoted.
There's just like swastikas in the next
exactly.
ring.
They see Jake Shields and they're just like, that must be what MMA is, even though Jake Shields, I think is, you could correct me, I think a lot of people in MMA are not super impressed with Jake Shields and his like rhetoric or anything like that.
He hasn't fought in a really long time. And then I know that he kind of went crazy QAnon. And then, although, hasn't he kind of leveled out a little bit? Like, isn't he kind of a little bit more, like, doesn't he say things that really pisses the right off too? Like, isn't he kind of like
it's
keeping
because he
his head out?
hates Jews so much.
Oh, okay.
So he hates Trump because Trump doesn't hate Israel enough.
Ah, I got it.
Yeah,
okay.
So he's more cozying up with like the Nazi side.
Yeah,
of
then
it
maybe
right
I'm
now.
doing the exact same thing you're talking about, where I'm just like labeling it as a. Well, yeah, and it's funny because like he's like good friends with Nate Diaz, and that's
I don't know who that is.
Nate Diaz is like the guy who beat up like, so there's this wonderful lore of like another great thing about fighting, like Conor McGregor's on top of the world. He's like pissing everybody off. He's saying racist things. He has this fight for the lightweight championship that was like, you know, everybody's looking forward to it for like a year. And then the fighter got injured in training and canceled literally like a week and a half before the fight. And they bring in Nate Diaz, who is just like a fan favorite. He's never won a championship. He's never been like the #1 fighter. He's always just been like, but he's like super legit. He's super funny because he's just weird. He's like extremely, I mean, I look at him and I just see somebody who's like always uncomfortable in interviews, always like just wants to fight because he just, that's what he does. And then he just wants to go smoke weed and like, you know, do cardio. And yeah, and he ends up upsetting, like on a week's notice, ends up upsetting Conor McGregor and choking him out, and it was, you know, the whole fight world was just like, what just happened? But yeah, him hanging out with Jake Shields, like the two personalities are just very, you can't really imagine it being. But again, the reason I'm even bringing this up is because I think that when you're talking about the salt of the earth thing with combat sports, I think that like if you're to go into an MMA gym or to a jiu-jitsu gym or something like that, and if you're to have that sort of like masculine bully attitude, like you're gonna be humbled immediately, and you're gonna find out exactly like how far that gets you, and then, you know, you either have the choice of not going back and, you know, okay, well, that was my free trial and let's not talk about this again. Or you'll be like, okay, well, what did I do wrong? And then you'll work your way up. And in that, it provides, I mean, because really, it's a lot of failure, figuring out what you did wrong, and you're doing, and then, you know, correcting it, and then doing better next time. And you do that over the course of years while experiencing physical adversity that you were initially uncomfortable with, and now you learn how to calm down. And it's a really good vehicle for a lot of people to just learn how to live their life. Like,
a lot of people who are in addiction, a lot of them go into combat sports as a way of kind of achieving sobriety. Yeah. Because at some neurochemical level, I think it's especially highly relapse-prone individuals, so it's a much more biochemical issue that's going on for them. Combat sports and like fitness in general, but especially combat sports. I think I have like 5 clients that all do like boxing now. Right. Right.
Especially if they're competing. I mean, all of a sudden the tax for going on a binge is like way high. Yeah. Like not only is it going to hurt really bad when you get knocked out, but it's going to be embarrassing, and it's going to like screw up everything that you work so hard for. Although I suppose that is why people do get, like, I feel like a lot of addiction is people trying to just destroy
what they work for.
Destroy what they work for. But
yeah, I think it's mostly the dopamine balance. Like one of the best things you can do when people are withdrawing, for example, is like get them outside and get them exercising so they get some oxytocin, because they're not making much of that when they're detoxing. This is not a good segue, but I wanted to tie in. You were talking a little bit about like the salt of the earth people. And then you were talking about this experience of like the spiritual experience of basically doing exposure therapy in spaces you're uncomfortable with.
Sure, yeah.
How do you balance that with like other groups of people? Like there's this tenuous view that I have of echo chambers and how in some ways echo chambers can be really valuable, especially for people who feel like otherized and can't find community elsewhere, right? I think that's why people fall into echo chambers a lot of the time. And on the flip side, it's probably really important to push yourself to like go into these alternative spaces, right? The fact that people don't even understand what incels are like. And it took a researcher just polling them to be like, oh, they're not at all what we thought they were, right? Like we were completely wrong. I guess, how do you like balance these two things, especially if like maybe the viewpoints of the people that you're not exposed to, you might find dangerous or like harmful? I'm curious your thoughts on that.
I think the phones and the social media has made democracy, it really is put into question, I think, for a lot of people. Like because they have this basic question of like, how can I coexist with people that I don't like, right?
Yeah.
And not just the cutesy, like disagree with, like, you know, within this margin of like, you know, all of us probably have enough like shared views that we're like, so we can tolerate our disagreements. Like, no, like people that actually you think are like harmful or bad, like how can I live with them when that's literally like the first kind of proposal of democracy is like, that's what you're gonna do.
Yeah.
You're like live amongst people and in agreement with people that you actually don't agree with. And it's what like Robert B. Talise would talk about, an academic that I interviewed at Vanderbilt University. It's the paradox of democracy, like these fundamental paradoxes of democracy, or the paradox of democracy is like, I want good things to happen, and I need to exercise my power to make good things happen, and I'm also going to hold up this other value of democracy, which is at odds with that, fundamentally, because I need to defeat the people that might do a bad thing, you know what I mean? Anyways, I think that the echo chamber, like what you're talking about, like people say it like it's a bad thing, but insofar as it's just like shared social language, like it is community. Like having like a echo chamber, or, you know, to me, it's also like having like gated culture instead of like open culture that's like accessible to everybody. There's this really good Substack article. I don't remember who the person is that wrote it, but it was about comparing Kendrick Lamar's Not Like Us video to like Charlie XCX, just as one being mass culture and one is kind of like gated and coded culture. And so like the Not Like Us music video has like a ton of references to where Kendrick is from, like a ton of things that are not explained. They're just put there and they're in code so that they exclude people. And the fact that you can be excluded from something is kind of what makes it. Like that's the border, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, I believe in like culture, and what democracy is not like not all the time like mass culture. It's a bunch of distinct cultures being able to like coexist and speak to each other and even know what themselves are, you know? Like when you said like the artist community has like no fucking idea what the MMA community is like, I think like because of I think it's all about the scrolling. That's just my whole thing. But I think because of the phones and the social media, I don't think communities even know what their own communities think or are like. You know what I mean? Because we have to engage with this sort of strange, fast performance veneer thing. We have mass culture kind of pouring into us all the time that like, it gets weird. You know what I mean? Like I have like friends like, you know, in like the music scene where they all kind of signal and Instagram post like constantly this like veneer of what they think that each other think. And then in personal relationship, you find out like what they really think. And it's always kind of more dynamic and fluid. It's more of this like salt of the earthy thing, right? Yeah. Like I know people that are like on the, you know, like let's say more right-wing people that would look at like, you know, a bunch of my friends and think they're like brain dead, zombie, woke, like, you know, evil, I don't know, cancel mob, whatever they are, you know? And they'll think that, and they can think that. And I would think that too if I was just looking at their Instagram posts. Right. And then I know them personally though. It's like, no, we all also know like finance and self-preservation and nuance, like everybody, every single person. So I don't know, that's just one thing. And then so like part of like how to make like a community more of a community, I'm a big advocate for like ritual. So it's like, you know, you go do the jujitsu thing and you go in like trying to be cocky and then you get massively humbled. There is like an established social language. Like there's a thing that you can now kind of grow up into, you know, there's mentorship and there's things that you can learn to become part of this community. So you walked up to it and the code hit you in the face. You are not part of this community. You're low status in this community. but there is like kind of socially known and sometimes even written down and like ritual procedural things that you can do to like pay dues and conform and become part of that community. And so, you know, I'm just really interested now in trying to figure out like, I don't know, I think it's necessary because of the deterioration of these kind of things that used to exist more just in society.
Yeah.
I think we need to kind of intentionally recommit to them. So that's what, you know, I kind of concern myself with, you know, and it's interesting as fuck, right? Like even for me, like I'm openly Christian, queer, left, and, you know, I talk about the Bible all the time, I think, and I'm always talking about like, you know, these things like that, you know, like you said, like people have coded right, you know, rather thoughtlessly, and not even like really, but just kind of passively on their phone. They're like fighting, that's like right wing, or they'll be like exercise, that's like right wing, like
Bible
fitness
stuff,
content,
right wing.
Yeah, they just kind of code it, even though that's not even like true in their own hearts, you know. And so for me, it's like in my community, I just built a room where like, you know, you can just be openly Christian and queer and say fuck and all sorts of things. Like I just was the way that I was. And this horde of people showed up. It turns out they're all here. Like I've a ton of like religious and ex-religious people or religious curious people or people who just find that compelling. And like my community gets to be like this wider kind of far left, even to some center right, like tent.
Right.
But like, I think the reason that that like works is because the rules of the game are very apparent. So like, I don't know.
Do you think you have a potential survivor bias? Like, because to some degree, you're like, one thing that I think is really interesting about your art and your channel and your community.
Have you seen any of my anything?
Yes. Before this, I mean, I didn't run across it organically.
No, I was just wondering.
Yeah, no, I did. I did in the last week.
But one thing that I think is really interesting about like your culture and your community is this. It feels like you strive for authenticity in a way that is authentic. Whereas authenticity is like it's like the name of the game right now. Except I've heard people being like, I feel like AOC is more authentic than she's ever been. I'm like, she has literally explicitly said that she is being pragmatic and like abandoning certain things that are core to her.
Yeah.
So she can get shit done that she cares about, right? Which is, it's cool. I agree with her in that ways. But fundamentally, she's being less authentic to herself to achieve certain gains. Or people say like, Donald Trump is just like so authentic. And I'm like, you literally voted for him because you think that he just lies all the time, unless like him being a liar is his authentic self, right? And so it's interesting because in many ways, I feel like we pursue authenticity at a major social level, especially on social media, in a deeply inauthentic way. Like authenticity isn't actually allowed. Performative authenticity is.
Well, I think that authenticity is like what does that mean? And that's the thing to be pulling apart,
So
right?
the question is, if I turn, so like when I talk to incels, right? The worst advice that people give them is like, be yourself. Because who they are is self-pitying, victim mindset, anxious, insecure men who are angry. And so if they're just being themselves, they kind of suck. They're not very likable a lot of the time, right? And so I guess like, how do you bridge these two things of like, I want to be authentic and like, especially at like this public level of like, I want to be authentic. But a lot of authentic parts of people are ugly and no one's going to like them and should probably change. They should probably be working on these things. Like, how do you balance these two things?
Well, John, were you going to say something?
Oh, just about authenticity. I think that it's like, it's interesting because it is like such a popular thing in politics now to be like a very authentic person. And obviously like when I think about it, like I want to be, I feel like I'm too authentic. I feel like I don't have a different, I don't have a different personality in my videos than I do. And I'm jealous of people who do. Where I'm like, oh, there's more layers in me. It's just like, nope, this is what I'm obsessed with. And this is how I talk. And okay. But a politician, you're a public servant. Like authenticity is not necessarily the greatest thing.
Coded into the job.
Yeah, like you want to be representing your constituents. And when I think of like a really authentic politician, I think of somebody like Bernie Sanders, who like has garnished a lot of interest and made a lot of people think differently about like their role in society and their role in economics and stuff like that, but has been not really a great politician in terms of like getting laws passed and stuff. He's done a pretty terrible job when you just like look at his record of writing and passing things. Like, you know, he's renamed a couple post offices and things like that. And that's because he's too authentic and he can't actually bridge a point with other people that would vote in his favor. And so democratically, it starts, it turns out that like maybe he would have been a better writer, maybe he would have been, and then like a politician would have taken his ideas and
Yeah, it's funny too. Also, different people's different ideas of authenticity, because for some very left people, there's that martyrdom thing where like authenticity means you lose. Like if you win, that means you're inauthentic. I've heard people say this to my face, right? Like even someone said to me one time, they were like, their belief is that the prime minister, I'm from Canada, that the prime minister, like it's impossible for there to be a good prime minister because you have to be evil to get to that position of power. And so I'm like, okay, so what you just set up is a paradigm where you will never win ever in your entire life.
Yeah.
Because by the nature of, someone winning, that means they are your enemy. So this is like a death cult. This is just a cult of failure.
Yeah.
Where you just like, gonna piously like dismiss everything while having a psychological split in your brain where in your personal life you have to have the nuance, and you know what I mean? Like it's just preposterous. I think that, but I do think authenticity has just been like very like under assault. And I think it's been like fetishized and people are confused about like what it is. So the philosopher John Dewey is like one of my favorite guys, big defender of democracy and wonderful writer about, pragmatism and art and also just like education and growing. I'm a big fan of his philosophy. Like one of my longer term goals is to be like the person that can like really talk about experience in nature and art as experience, like his two giant tomes that a lot of people kind of, in the philosophy community, as the academic community, as I've experienced it, that's like for them, that's like where he went off the deep end. Like got like kind of crazy, you know what I mean? It's like his like Megalopolis or something, and they're like, I like The Godfather, which was like, whatever, Reconstruction of philosophy or whatever. Anyways, what he talks about in art is, like to express yourself through art. He really takes to the word like express, like what does that mean? And he means it's like making wine out of grapes. It's like pushing something through something. It's like coming up against, like it's having you, like your, let's call it your authenticity, but like you, the way you are, what you like, what you want to do. And then you come up against the objective world, because you have to do this with cameras and microphones, and you have to try to, like, you have to push through material, real things in order to get this thing from inside of you to outside of you. And as that happens, it's like conditioned and changed. So like, to say that art is about like individual, authentic, subjective truth or something, it's like, it's impossible. You have to move through the objective world to do it. It's necessarily like working, together to create something new, that's kind of outside of both of you, or, it's due to the union or whatever. Anyways, this is to be contrasted with like what he calls just discharge, where he says discharge is when you're just like, which is cool. I mean, we're musicians, right? Yeah. So you'll see people that do like the, I don't know, like punk band screaming thing, right? Obviously I think it's expression and it's beautiful. There's art to all of this stuff, right? And I also think that art also goes through like experimental phases where it is like a lot, like shoving out before like you realize like it like calcifies into like a repeatable structure, like genre or medium or a culture or whatever. But yeah, like some people are just like discharging where they're making art, where they just like write down the thing that I wanted to write, and then they don't want to change it. They don't want to edit it. They don't care if like other people, like they're not interacting with like the culture and the language. They're not like pushing through. And so what I think what we're calling authenticity, like politically and in culture a lot, is people like that people just discharge. Like that's what people like about Trump. Is there's very little space between like him and what comes out of him. He just does. And I think it's like so spiritually corrosive actually, because the kind of like narcissism, the like anti-world kind of philosophy, where you want it all to exist inside of you, right? Like like that's why I think Trump is this like champion of subjectivity, because it appears that he doesn't really respond to like stimulus or like input, and he doesn't move towards specific goals. His whole agenda is just trying to make everything about him as much as possible. And you can see it through the tariff stuff, right? He's clearly had an idea, he's discharging it, he's trying it, getting big reactions, everyone's talking about him, the whole world is shifted to now be staring at him. He's like, this is great, I don't know where this is going, but it's good because everyone's looking at me, it's all about me now. And I think that she's just gonna like, I don't think he planned to do like this, whatever, the insider trading thing with the stock market. I don't think he planned that from the start.
No.
I think he just tries stuff. And then I think the discovered attacks that he's going to find along the way are all going to be creeping to authoritarianism and tyranny and narcissism and decadence.
But it's
and
like,
insanity.
it's almost fundamentally accidental of his like unthoughtful discharge.
Yeah, of course, right? Because then the flip side of this is like, again, I don't think he was scheming to become the president his whole life, but then you look at him like in New York in the 80s, the same thing. It's just like, what can I do to make stuff about me? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's nightmarish. And again, Byung-Chul Han, we just covered the disappearance of rituals in my book club on Patreon. And he calls it the cult of authenticity. He's a major critic of authenticity. And that's, you know, I am too, I guess, basically. And I've always have been since I was like, 17. I was like, I was in an art school and everyone around me is like, art is subjective. And it's like, that was the first thing that ever philosophically turned me on, because I was like, I hate that. I don't know why I hate that. I just hate it. And I was like, art is objective, and I wanted to fight about it. And that's like kind of a through line in all of my work, and realizing like over time, as it's kind of deepened and become more like rich, I think it's like about this too. It's about like conforming to things that are above you, and like not just like shrugging it all off, but really engaging with the world. And that's how I actually feel like, because you can quantify it and like instrumentalize it to some degree, talking about like the dopamine balance of like going MMA fighting or like touching grass and stuff.
Yeah.
But the flip side is also like, go be in the world. Like what an addiction a lot of time is just like you're going farther into yourself, you know, and just about this. And you're not like accepting that you are in the world. You're not accepting of like discomfort and accepting that like, this experience might not be about me and how I feel right now. And that's healthy as fuck. I mean, it's also holy,
I've always like personally looked at art as like, I've always just sort of, and this is just with my own personal outlook, I've sort of broken things into like art and service. And I think I did that early on because like it was really stressful making a living as a musician in my 20s, where I was just knowing that like, maybe this like whole thing that I'm doing on this next album is not going to work and people aren't going to like it, and then I'm going to be poor and not be able to pay rent. And so I started doing music for more and more music for like advertisements and television and stuff, and it all of a sudden made me a way better artist because I no longer gave a shit about how much I was making from the album sales or shows or stuff like that, because I had this side thing that was a service. And so I guess like I look at it, whereas if it were like really dark out tonight and I needed more light in my yard, so I installed a light somewhere out there, and then okay, well now it's bright enough, and now I could see what I need to do at night. I could get get around the property, and then but I really enjoyed installing that light. So I install like another one, and then another one, and then I install like 100, all in like the backwoods here, something like that. And the only reason I did it is because I wanted to do it, and then somebody might drive by and go, that yard looks fucking crazy. What is happening over there? I feel like that is like the purest form of art, where you just do something for the sake of just wanting to do it without any expectation of like where it'll go or what it'll do. And I feel like in music we have this like, I feel like it's sometimes toxic, this like finish more songs, get more songs done. And I will write songs, I will mix them and master them and delete them because I love making music. And I fucking hate the music industry. So it's like these two things, if I can make music without having to depend on releasing it, then all of a sudden that opens up this whole new opportunity to just, I guess, be more zen about the entire process and enjoy life more.
Did you see you watch Jacob Collier interviews ever?
A few.
There's this one podcast he was on, I think it was Colin and Samir, where he talked about Rick Rubin, and there's a bit of he actually critiques like his book, I remember what's called, with the circle,
I've
the one.
read it, but
and he critiques it. I'm gonna do like a longer video about all this later this year, but the critique is that this can slide like the thing that you're describing. Like, I trust you with it, and you're speaking to something real, and I would re-say it in my words, like the way that I would say it. I think it's about intrinsic value, and I think it's very beautiful and it's very true. But it also can slide into the sort of like, again, mythologizing of like narcissism of the self and the subjectivity thing, where that's what Jacob Collier is talking about, is like how Rick Rubin sometimes describes art is sometimes as if you're describing art for people who haven't experienced, like, aren't already artists, that haven't experienced like taking things to completion repeatedly already, right? Yeah. Because you'll give this mythology of it. It's about like standing on a mountain and listening to the muse and not giving a fuck about what anyone says and doing it. And it's like purely individualistic. And it's about this like strike of lightning, enforce yourself upon the world. Don't let anyone condition what you're doing. And yeah, that's true. That's useful. I think the reason that that's useful and beautiful is because it points you towards intrinsic value. I would actually argue that still finding something that is kind of functionally objective and outside of the self, like what makes it so useful, like that you can do, like if you set up that light in your yard, you know, and it feels good. Like what that means is like this thing, you set the light up in your yard and it was going to be an instrumental value that was going to allow you to do something, right? But then what happened is the instrumental value became the intrinsic value. You were like, I like doing this. And that to me, that's the meaning of life. Like that's it. Like intrinsic final values, like that is what makes life meaningful. And that's what what's his name? Harry G. Frankfurt like talks about in The Reasons of Love. Like it's like the meaning of life is finding something you love like for its own sake, something worth doing and having a relationship with for its own sake. So I think that's the part that's like beautiful when you talk about like making a song and mixing and mastering and deleting. You're like, I just love doing this. Or like C.T. Nguyen talks about it with like games where it's like if you have your friends that like do a bunch of climbing, and you're like, so, you know, when you're like 50 or whatever, like, what are you building up to? Why are you doing this? When are you going to retire from this? Like, or something like that, you know? Or they're like, what are you talking about? Like, this is it. Like, this is fucking it. There's nothing else. This is the final value for me. You know what I mean?
How do you balance that then against like the, as you said, like the narcissistic mythologizing of self, right? Like, because I think as somebody, it's interesting. I like listening to artists talk because I feel very outside of that world, right? Like I come from a very science academic. We always joke in my family, my brother got the art because he's extremely talented in art and very gay. And I am very not all of those things growing up. And so one of like the science academics criticisms of artists, right? Like a lot of academics hate working with artists because of kind of that, that narcissism, essentially, that like sense of self being like, yeah, but I don't do things this way. And the scientist goes like, oh, right? Because science doesn't have that, I don't matter in science. In fact, science is almost the opposite, where you want to remove yourself as much as possible. You're trying to remove bias and try to make sure that you're not inserting yourself into the medium at all. And so I guess like, how do you in art, because I think the intrinsic value that you're talking about is true. Like you do need to fundamentally come to care about things. I guess with an artist, do you think that like being an artist is necessarily somewhat narcissistic in nature? Or like, how do you balance these things? Or is it inevitable, I suppose?
I think, well, and with science, it's funny, right? It's also like you are literally instrumentalizing everything. Like you're taking like experience, like and you're taking intrinsic values, and you're like, you know what I mean? So if I'm being studied about like my artistry or something, they're literally reducing my life to numbers, putting me in a data set for some higher purpose that's always somehow off in the distance. So you know what I mean? There's literally that like functional quality of it. I think. And so I think so. Artists, I think, when well calibrated, when like healthy and doing their art thing, they're sensitive to intrinsic value. Like that's the thing, and I think that's beautiful, right? And so I don't think that is really narcissistic. Like even like what you're talking about, like following your passion and getting fascinated by. I mean, like look at this fucking place. Like you're constantly fascinated by new things, constantly learning things.
I'm obsessed with my own little life and whole. Yeah, I mean it's like.
But it's
100%.
Not even just your little life and whole, because you're obsessed with like technologies and cultures and histories and the way things work. Like you're always like learning and learning to build things. So you're also becoming encultured, like into the world. You're not just sitting doing something and like, you're always like learning, you know what I mean? Always like expanding. And so.
But I'd also never call anything that Bennett, like I've never experienced Ben and been like, yeah, that's a really narcissistic artist.
Exactly,
like,
that's what I'm saying. Because I don't think that is narcissistic. To be sensitive to beauty and to be constantly learning and wanting to like immerse yourself in new things. And I know I'm not this kind of musician, but I know like this other musician, Patricia Taxon, that's like on the internet. And they're the same way, like where they just like crank out album after album and want to like be so many things. I want to make like a pure ambient album and now I want to make a pure this, and they have like all these. I'm not like that. I like really sit on my projects. I'm just like a bit of like a different kind of artist, but I think that's a very beautiful, that is a very like pro-social attitude to have, really, right? And in a way, that's kind of what Jacob Collier is kind of arguing for against this Rick Rubin like sit on top of a mountain thing, is like, the other part of art that's beautiful is just learning how to do something like by its rules, like not just having strike of lightning, I'm the original unknown thing from the stratosphere that paid no heed to anybody, but like actually like, getting into the jazz community and learning to play jazz. And there's a right way to do it,
I think it's interesting. Like, I mean, one person who thought that my session deleting habit was like utterly just stupid and ridiculous is Aphex Twin, who I thought would have, like, I was telling him that expecting him to be like,
hell yeah, brother,
man,
yeah.
But he was like, nah, man, I would recommend not doing that. That's so dumb. It's just like, because, you know, I guess if you're thinking of like a narcissistic, like segregated, intentionally segregated artist in some way, Aphex Twin would be like the number one, you know, like the literally lives in the middle of nowhere and just cranks out his own, you know, and releases it when he doesn't even release it that much anymore, or he releases stuff that's like 30 years old just because he, you know, doesn't find value in what people think of him anymore, or never really did. Like he's always just been a space cadet in that way. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess when I think of narcissist, there has to be like some socializing happening. Like you can't call it, like if somebody lives in a cabin and they're just like hunting for food and you know, bringing the food back and skinning it and cooking it and then working on the door that broke because of the snowstorm and whatever else. Like you'd be like, you're a narcissist. All you care about is your own, you know, it's like, well, no,
but it's possible that they could be a narcissist if you were the fly on the wall that could observe them, you know, if they were forcing that social exchange.
But being antisocial is not even the same as being narcissistic.
Yeah.
So at like the risk of being like braggy as an artist speaking to somebody who's not an artist, like I think that like to one of the few people in the world who doesn't think they're an artist. It's amazing.
Honestly.
Yeah. I like at least with music, I think it's because I've tried to understand its value for a long time. And so like there's two things that like I think are really, so like from a more scientific level, like you have to wonder why music? Why did humans evolve in multiple cultures? It's not like music was like invented somewhere in the Middle East and then, you know, it grew and more people. Like everybody was doing it at the same time. And the dog. That was a weird sound. But it like multiple communities or multiple cultures around the world from long before we had language were playing music of some type. They were drumming, mostly with rhythm, and then melody became a thing. Melody is very, like the way that we understand harmony in the West and most of the East is very, very similar to, for example, if I had a metal tube, or a plastic tube rather, and like a vacuum tube, and I spun it, it would play the Jeopardy theme song. Right, because that's just like how sound, to break it down is like the simple as possible for viewers. That's like that's how sound resonates, and it automatically just fits into certain tones in nature. And so like, but
that's
why?
Insane. The harmonic cycle in nature. And when you start to like realize that literally what a perfect major third is like, no, it's actually here. Yes. Like it's out here.
Yeah. Except for the wolf fifth. There's something called the wolf fifth, and it's not. If you play everything equally, for some reason, the wolf fifth, when a human hears it, they call it the wolf fifth because it sounds like a howling wolf over the music. And so they changed it in the Gregorian scale a little bit but anyway, so like for a long time I wondered why did all the humans do this? And it kind of just I don't know, I did a video on this, and while writing the video, I did a video on entropy in music. Like what entropy is, how people misunderstand entropy, and like why so many institutions are always trying to find or figure out or place entropy in music in some way, even though it's like a really absurd thing to even think about. That's kind of a waste of time. But just like, but everybody's obsessed with it. And it kind of made me realize like, holy shit, like if you're walking around in the woods out here, and you don't have technology, you don't have anything else, like the sounds are utterly chaotic. You can't make sense, like you have latent inhibition in your brain. And so if I say, hey, listen to that bird up in that tree, you're not hearing the car in the distance, you're not hearing a plane, you're not hearing a squirrel, you're generally only hearing the bird because your brain has this latency that filters it out.
And has tuned into the bird.
Yes. Yeah. Unless you have low latent inhibition, or some people who have, what do they call it? Not everybody, it's a common word now. Everybody's talking about it.
Autism?
No, not autism, but where they
see colors, taste.
No, where they hear too many things at once and they get overwhelmed.
Overstimulation.
There's some other things.
They're sensitive to stimuli, basically.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah. But like low latent inhibition, like people who actually have an abnormality in their brain, like that's like extreme. Like most of them can't drive. They can't.
They hate it.
Anyway, so it's like by making music, and by getting a dopamine rush from making music or listening to music, like our brains are training us to recognize patterns. in sound, which allows us to say, oh, there's a predator, or oh, there's something. And so so that's the first part. The second part I'll be much faster about. There's like things when I express how I feel, like what I just described to you is pretty easy because I was able to use English. But if I were to tell you exactly how I felt today, I can't do it very well by quantifying it into English words. And I feel like music often in communication allows, once you get experienced enough at it, it allows you to communicate between those words in ways that like I can't. And that is like a really beautiful thing. And like if you put a baby in front of a piano, all a baby can really express in general is like, I'm excited or I'm not excited. Those are like the two things. It's very binary with like an infant. And so they would slam on the piano or they wouldn't. And then like, you know, they became like an 8-year-old or something like that. They could say, I'm happy, I'm sad. They could play all these chords that you would actually start to feel a little bit of how they felt, but you wouldn't have the English details. You wouldn't know that they were sad because their teacher yelled at them. You would then, you would hear it and you would then feel it and you would apply it to, oh, I'm sad because of this thing that happened with my husband or dog or whatever. And then, you know, when you become Herbie Hancock or somebody, you can literally describe Manhattan with a piano.
Yeah, I remember when I was younger, and honestly, I still do this sometimes, I would explain how I felt to my parents just by like giving them a song. Like I'd be like, I can't explain it to you. And so I'd usually give them music, in part because I was very like anhedonic, not anhedonic, like, what's the word where you're disconnected from your body? Akaesthesia or whatever.
That's what I was going to say.
But tying it back, it's interesting asking about the narcissism of art, because I think scientists will often view artists as kind of like this more narcissistic group. But I suspect artists would probably feel the same about scientists, because narcissism isn't about knowing oneself or self-focus, right? It's about some level of the immovable I. Right. So I've definitely met scientists who are deeply narcissistic, where you'll be like, hey, like this research you're doing methodologically is poor in these ways. You keep on getting non-findings. Probably your hypothesis is wrong. And like they're the immovable I. They must be right. Things must be done the way they want. And it's like the immovable I that desires adulation. So not only are they immovable, but you must orient positively towards them or they can't tolerate it. Right.
I think it's, to me, that's that person or that attitude is when you're using culture basically as like an instrumental thing to redound to your glory. Like it's a status play, right?
Yeah, like I would think of that as a bad scientist personally.
Exactly, right?
Be like, you're attaching your own identity.
And they literally are, because they, and you'll see like a bad scientist will be like, I'm not willing to like, let go of the glory that I got out of this paper, even if it's being revised. So you see the value system is that my status is more important than the thing I purport to be passionate about. And that's the same thing with artists, right? It's like when I see artists that like are not, like, you know what I mean? Like, you know, like Aphex Twin to me is so clearly not like a, like that's someone that's just fascinated by a thing, you know? He's just fascinated by what he's doing completely authentically and is totally consumed by it.
And who doesn't give a fuck what anybody thinks.
And that's really cool. And it's actually one of the magical things about being that perfectly authentic person is, I think this is C.T. Nguyen, again, talking about like the value of art, is when you are, if you treat it again like a kind of social game, when you are completely authentic and honest, then people will, like, you are entering, you're putting data out there that people can coalesce around, and then people that resonate with it, they're like, oh, holy shit, like deeper than words, us authentically are connecting about this thing. So you enter into a game when you are authentic where it's like you can connect with other people on that level. So, you know, when Aphex Twin throws all that shit out there, and like you and me are like, this is sick, and then you and me get to talk to each other and be like, can you believe this? Now there's like a deeper connection. So it's also like, you know, building relationship, but actually also interestingly, in, you know, talking about that communication thing, that again relies on other people. Like again, that you, in order to make like, I don't know, like for me to communicate like a feeling through a song, it means that I have to be creating it, thinking about how this affects other people that experience it, right? Like I have someone else in the room with me while making the art that's like listening to it, you know, even just conceptually, and it's kind of for people to listen to. It isn't just for me to sit around and listen to all day. I mean, and I guess that's fine. That's kind of value neutral, I would say, if someone just wants to like make some songs and just listen to their own songs all day. But I think there's like we're such social creatures on such a fundamental level. I think that is, you know, always the motivation in some way or another. And same with status. You couldn't be high status without a community of people to be above in status.
Yeah, like and the way you described a scientist thinking about it, like I feel like a lot of scientists I know are musicians or are like artists in some way. Right? I feel like the two are very good at like counterbalancing, because one is like very abstract and one is very not. I don't think of science as rigid, really. Like, I don't think of it that way. I think of science as like, the most important rule, I think, whenever I'm writing a paper, whenever I'm doing any sort of research, is I just need to make sure that I want to know the answer to my question more than I want to be right.
Yeah, exactly.
And usually that's the case if it's something as specific as, finding out, how to resonate something with like an ultrasonic frequency, or whatever it is. Like, I don't give a shit about being right. I give a shit about like making something that works, that could make something cool happen or useful for somebody else that's somewhere down the line, maybe, or make me money. Who knows? Like, all these things are different. But yeah, like, one thing I hate more than any, no matter how ridiculous somebody gets in religion or anything other, the thing I hate the most is the like rigorous atheist type who just thinks any sort of thing that isn't like provable well, it's also like the type of person who always says, show me the white papers, where it's like, when on the internet, you hear those arguments all the time where people are like, well, show me the white papers I need. It's like, you don't know how to read a fucking white
you're not
paper.
going to look at that. That's not what you're doing.
You have no idea what a white paper even is if you're like asking for one about, an argument about like crypto or, something like that. But also like the type of people who just hate religion and don't see any value in it whatsoever. And I say this as a completely agnostic person who's not religious at all. But like, my entire, like, from learning gospel when I was a kid, from like, that was all done. That's all thanks to religion. Like, that's why that entire section of music exists. Religion has written a storybook that has defined the culture we live in today, whether I want to admit it or not. Like, that's all there is to it. And like, and a lot of people I know find a lot of happiness in religion. And that's great, because they only have like 70, 80 years on this planet. So enjoy it and do whatever you want. You don't have to like find out, how exactly the universe started or how it's going to end. Like,
Do you find anti-theists irksome specifically because they're anti-theist, or is there like a core behavior there that when you see it expressed towards other, if religion is X, right, anti-theists are very opposed to X, do you find that trait is irksome, or it's the religious revulsion specifically that bothers you?
I think like
is it the closed-mindedness essentially?
It's really important to say, it's really important to say, I don't fucking know and I don't understand. If you ask me right now for my take on Israel versus Palestine, I do not fucking know.
Yeah.
That's all there is to it. And I've thought about this because everybody asks me for my take on this fucking thing. And like, here's the thing. I have friends in Israel and I have Palestinian friends. I don't like hang out with them every day. Obviously, they're over there. But like, they're people I know who have told me what's happening in their life as this conflict has flared up in this period. And both of them are in the fog of war. So they don't know what's actually happening, all around. I certainly don't over here. I have no idea. And so then you think, okay, well, maybe in 10 years, I'll watch a PBS Frontline on it and then I'll know. But nope, because the victor gets to write history. So the actual fact is I'm never going to know what's happening I'm never going to have a full 360 understanding of the conflict. And most people, if not all people that I ever meet in my entire life, will not have that 360 understanding. There will always be missing information that they're not getting. And so, like, when it comes to something like religion, like, you don't understand why somebody would want to blow themselves up. You don't understand why somebody would be Catholic and like go through all the rigorous speaking Latin in Mass and all that. I mean, that's how I grew up as a Catholic. Like for example, like when people who have no experience with Catholicism whatsoever, which is something that like I didn't even realize existed until I moved down south, where people are like, wait, what? What's sacraments and saints? But yeah, like all of the weird rituals, like you learn how crazy, like, oh wow, I actually did a bunch of crazy things as part of that, wearing the robes as an altar boy, and like all this weird shit that like most people in the South haven't experienced. And I just don't understand it, and it's okay. And it's okay to say like, you don't get it. And so for somebody to like call themselves a scientist, but then be able to just not understand why somebody would like something, and instead of being like, basically saying like, no, Muhammad doesn't exist. God, Jesus Christ was not the son of God.
Right.
Because it's like, okay, you don't know that. Like, but it is probable that these things, but you don't, because science is not a binary thing. It's just something's really probable or it's not probable. Like and so you already have to start on there. Like there is no right or wrong. There's only probabilities. And then second of all, like, why would you not be more interested in why they have the belief system that they have than you would be in just telling them that their belief system is wrong? Like that might actually solve a fucking problem. You might, like, if you're so upset that like people are killing each other over belief in God, then maybe you should figure out why they believe in God. Maybe you should figure out, like, you know, exactly. There's more to learn for Richard Dawkins or somebody like that. Like there's way more to learn from like in that than there is to just bleh.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's beautiful. I mean, like famously Alex O'Connor's arc, right? That's like been his whole thing. Starting as like an anti-religion, I think, basically atheist channel. I do not follow him closely, but I've just been informed and I've seen some of the stuff with Jordan Peterson because I was doing crazy research on that for the longest time. But yeah, just like that's actually the beautiful like redemption thing. Like to me, like as a religious person, that's a religious shape. It's like when you go from the like, and then you're like, wait, what if I, you know what I mean? Like instead, like you just turn into this growing, expanding, like curious thing. And then you are actually dealing with the problem that you kind of thought you were stubbornly dealing with. So I know he's gone on a whole like now adventure, just becoming actually wildly curious and trying to learn everything about this thing that he was kind of like against. Yeah, it's also a symptom of context collapse, like just online context collapse. And I think, again, speaking of democracy, like one of the things that is making democracy not work, one of the things we've forgotten about democracy, perhaps because it was kind of unconscious procedural knowledge embedded in society, but now we've taken that away, so we have to actually figure it out and make it explicit in order to keep it. But not everybody can do everything. And not everybody has to have opinion about everything, and not everybody has to be perfect at everything and all that. And I think in our careers, like as like online people will try to morph you, you know, because whatever, what's like Hank Green's law of attention, it's like whatever gets attention will be created. That's what people are like hungry for, you know, and people start to try to treat their like content ingestion as if it's like, you know, this is an avatar for my moral character, and so I need them to constantly say things that I agree with, and that's the value I'm getting out of it.
The last video of yours that I watched was that one, was where you talked about your relationship with your viewers and what they demand and stuff like that. And yeah, I mean, it had like some really good points, because that is something that I always, like one of the things that you said that I always thought, like people, if I were to go on social media right now and say, what kind of album should I release next? People, what kind of video should I release next? They would almost always say, you should do another one like the one that I liked. And it's like, well, that's not my job. I already did that.
That's crazy.
So you listen to that over. And if I did it, you would not like it as much as the first one because you'd be sick of it. So like, no, it's my job to tell you about a new thing, or play you a new song or whatever it is, or a new style of music that I've found, or that I've adopted, or that I've changed, or that I've invented, or whatever it is, and like, and that may be good or bad, but like that is my job as a creator. It's not, my job isn't to, like, I would suck at my job if I listened to everybody.
How do you then, because that's like a very top-down approach to content creation, which I think makes a lot of sense, because I think a lot of times viewers often don't know what they want. And more importantly, commenters don't necessarily know what viewers want, because these aren't necessarily the same beast. And then on the flip side, I know a lot of content creators, I think I'm a lot more like this, where I'm a bit of a bottom up, where I'm like, I didn't really ever plan to get into content creation, so I'm mostly like, what do you guys want? I'll just make that, because like, I don't know what you guys want. How do you kind of balance the two of like, I think there's a certain level of taking the lead and like being that top down versus like responding to your community and what your viewers want? Or do you just do one and not the other? Like, how do you engage in these two things?
My NAMM video was definitely what viewers want. Like that one is just like a dopamine rush and it's fun. You know, it's like, cause it's just a bunch of stats about music production.
Just getting my water.
Yeah, go for it. It's just a bunch of stats about music production. So it's like, yeah, very inclusive to the core community. My Patreon viewers probably enjoyed it a lot more than somebody who, you know, watched a video of mine about how self-driving cars is kind of a grift. Like the very different. And the viewership showed it. It got like, it's the worst video performatively, like in the YouTube algorithm. It's like the worst video in the last year or two. Like it did very bad, but that's totally okay. It's fine. Not every video has to, like, you know, if you look at every video as like having to do better in the algorithm than the last one, then you're just going to have a really miserable career on YouTube. Like it's,
You make the world worse too.
Right, yes,
You reference
exactly.
blitzscaling a lot too, which
Yeah.
I'm glad you do, because I think people should be talking about that a lot, because that's the
Click
philosophy.
scaling?
Blitzscaling.
Blitzscaling.
What is? Oh, yeah. You should explain that.
Blitzscaling's where, well, I mean, you
We
got.
might swing back around to it. I want to talk
Yeah.
about the thing that you were talking
Yeah.
about, like the balancing of the.
Okay, yeah.
I think obviously everything exists on like a spectrum. Like I don't think they're firm categories. I think they're pragmatic categories always by like tendency, you know, you know. But I do think like that's part of why I care a lot about re-rendering like a divide between the stage and the audience. Like I believe in the sanctity of the stage, and like that, you know, to be a performer or even to be an artist actually like does maybe mean something. And so it's not just like everyone's an artist, just like diffuse it, because sometimes you lose something. Like it is a role that anyone can pass through. I don't think it's an objective category like you are or you aren't, but I do think it like matters. So like the ground up approach thing you're talking about, and I know a bunch of people like this, like you're actually kind of more like about community building. Like you're not trying to be like a performer, an artist that like has this wall of some kind. You're not, you know, you like this participatory kind of communal thing, and that shows in your personality and the fact that you like working with people, you know, you like to get involved with people, you know, and that's an obvious thing, that obviously real thing that one can do on the internet, clearly. The problem that I have is when that kind of encroaches upon like every performer or every stage, where it's like, you know, you have this temptation where it's like, you know, like on TikTok right now, if you are a musician, you have this temptation to kind of like fashion yourself as if you are an audience member, like to be like, hey guys, like here's my song, I'm like so relatable, and then like thank you so much, and then respond to comments. So it's like literally, it's bizarre. So it's like you can release something, and then everyone that likes it will be, can you do a tutorial for this? And I'm like, that's not performer behavior. You don't hop into the, and then also someone's like, this is bad, and you get in the comment section, you start fighting them. I'm like, why are you hopping into your own fan club to get in fights about your, like it's a bizarre behavior, and it's not performance, you know? And I believe it's important to have that like wall, and it's for the people, because like they'll think they want it, but you know, they don't realize you're like destroying everything you love. And even like you said, like with political things, like talk about Israel and Palestine, right? It's like, is it like you can't have a functioning democracy, a functioning coalition, if you require literally like we need to do multiple things at once. That's what's happening here, right? So it's someone's job to kind of take lead and be the performer of some kind, you know what I mean? Like the expert, or to take that as their craft, to make that their thing, right? But you also need like music. You need someone to like, I don't know, make green energy and shit, right? And like no one can do fucking everything at once. So if you're constantly trying to convert basically like and that's on my end, right? It's like, I'm not a political activist. Like I'm not an expert on global geopolitics. I'm not even an expert on like domestic politics. You know what I mean? I have my political leanings, but like I don't want to like make my job doesn't have to be like everything that someone yells at me out of a car window while speeding past me on the street, you know? I'm an artist and a philosopher, and you need someone to do that. So like my passion is like to try to you know, it's like, well, my passions are many, I suppose, but like it's to like beautify, right? It's to like it's about like ritual and beauty, and it's about like community and like relationship, and someone needs to do that, because you need your life to become more beautiful. Your life has to be worth living. Like that's part of the being alive thing. Yeah, no, I don't think. And then same with the. Like, you know, asking everyone to constantly do like BTS stuff, or like, you know, my audience would watch like I don't know, if I just started live streaming every Friday or something, right? Or like you know, if I just did like yeah, if I started doing live streams every
I love this. Self cue.
If I started doing live streams every Friday, my audience would show up, and they'd like that. They want that. If I mentioned that, they'll be like, please do that, right? But I would be demystifying myself. Like I would become something different, not the thing that they loved in the first place. I would start to hate them. Like it's not good. Like you need people to have their boundaries and like to be the thing that they are, and you not try to force them to be everything simultaneously, or else you just destroy everyone.
Yeah. Interesting.
One thing I started doing, or one thing I'm trying to do right now, is when I run into the comment that's like, you know, I'm really disappointed and surprised that you haven't made a video about, you know, about what's happening in Palestine, you know, something like that. Like that person who says that. I think I used to look at that where I'd almost like break it into these two sides, or be like, okay, there's like the left wing pain in the ass people and the right wing pain in the ass people, and the right wing people are like, I don't know who's more unhinged at this point. Like they're both. I think they're both like I sometimes feel like left gets a little more under my skin, because like just because it's like, okay, well, I've abandoned the right a long time ago, like hoping that like you'll come around. But this one, you know, but I
it's your
think
people that hurts when it's like your guys and you're like, hey, I'm on your side. I'm helping you.
The purity testing shit is just like, give me, bro. But I think what I'm trying to not do that anymore, not even look, because it's so politicized online. I think now I'm just like, okay, this is a person who is looking for a problem. That's what they're doing. Like they turned on their nobody turns on their computer anymore. I guess they opened up their laptop from sleep mode. But yeah, I mean, they opened up their web browser to look for a problem so they could speak. They want to hear themselves speak.
Yeah.
And so if I did a video on Palestine, I'd do it wrong. Like, it doesn't matter. And you know, somebody on the right or left. And I guess looking at people like that, or looking at like detecting that a little bit better, makes it a little bit easier to deal with and to tell the difference between like what's useful and what's not useful.
It's also just utter impotence, right? Like it's the fact that you are not in control of this thing.
Right.
You can't control it. Like is like, you know, this 300,000 subscriber YouTube channel going to end like a hundreds of years?
I'm sure Israel would be like, all right, boys, put the guns down.
And so I think it is really just an impotence thing. Is people are just the only thing that they can have to try to feel like control of the world is, can I control my content creators? Can I ingest something or like tweet something that like kind of gives me a feeling like I did my part, you know what I mean? I think it is like a in the face of helplessness and like just like tragedy. I think all over the place, right? The same reason like people try to like, I don't know, like be in my and these are like stray like nothing comments that like I never would respond to. And my comment sections are actually wonderful, but even if they weren't, I don't really read them, so I don't know. But when people would get mad at you for like saying a particular word or even like making a joke of some kind, you know what I mean? Like those like what this is their day. Like this is them trying to get some control over the universe right now. And like it's probably because they're like suffering or they're heartbroken and this is the one spot where they might be able to feel like I did something. But I think it really is like a massive sign of defeat when your only idea of like activism or like progress or like, you know, doing something to contribute to solving a problem that you are passionate about amounts to tweeting on like Elon Musk's like platform or like, you know what I mean? Instagram story reposting.
The small streamer in the chat.
It's really like, you're not, that's a horrible,
I have a friend who really stresses out about like mean comments and he has a large platform on YouTube. And he gets very stressed out by like some of the negative sentiment and stuff like that. And, but yeah, I mean, I almost did it as like an experiment for myself, but like on his birthday, I scraped every comment on his entire channel. Like I just wrote a script that scraped every single one and I made a big word cloud. Just sent in the word cloud and it's all positive because you can't even find the negative shit in it. Like once you actually, you know, look at the data as a whole, it's like, you're fucking amazing. You've made a huge positive mark on society with your channel. And you can't even find any of the bitching in it because, the words are so big. The words that were used the most are so big in the word cloud. Yeah,
it's the getting one guide thing, right? Like I really do think that the technology is designed to do that to you because it increases kind of attention and interactivity and this melding, this feedback effect where everyone gets more into it and it preys on the negative emotion you completely organically have. Like, you know, obviously, because if you said that I'd done something to hurt your feelings, then I would care and I'd want to do something about it. So like, you know, sometimes people go like, the internet, like, like whatever, negative content gets more attention and that says something really bad about like people. And I think the other version of interpreting that is like, that's our completely organic impulse to try to do something about bad things when you know, we pay attention to things that are problems so we can like, you know, go to them and like change them and make them better. And that's a good thing. It's just being like harvested and like weaponized to try to like get this other response out of you. But it's the democracy thing. It's a tragedy for democracy because when you get one guide, when you spend your whole like, you know, you're derailing like, you know, the beautiful work that you're doing because you're staring at like some like dark corner of something. And if you start speaking to it, then it gets bigger. And then that becomes your whole life as you're just doing this back and forth. Like, I mean, Sam Harris actually talked about this in his like when he left Twitter podcast. He talked about how tragically humbling it is to have deleted Twitter and your life instantly just got a million times better. And then to realize how much brain fog that you were in, that like you would do an episode on something see stuff on Twitter, get into Twitter fights about it, and you might do like 3 or 4 more episodes kind of on this subject, being like, yeah, this, you know?
People
and
need
then
to hear
realizing
this.
that if I just didn't fucking go on Twitter, that would have been good. And then everyone that's like looking up to me as their sort of curator of attention, they would be more honored because you would give them something valuable and you wouldn't be like dirtying them with your stupid like weakness and like distracting, and like you got to be something that actually was something, you know?
Interesting.
I know. You're going to have to not yell at Cora.
A new addition.
Yeah. Yeah. Both of you should talk really fast.
Oh, I'm talking.
Okay, you're good.
Good?
Yep.
Okay. You lived in Jordan Peterson's skin.
I was saying that.
What are your thoughts on him?
I was saying, that's so funny. Like, I was saying that I feel like I'm in a dream sometimes when someone starts talking about Jordan Peterson.
Yeah.
Or like even referencing or describing one of his conversations, because for pretty much all of 2023 and then and a lot of 2024 and ongoing now, like I've been working on this very large Jordan Peterson video. And so I really like consumed everything of him and like transcribed like most of it, just like hundreds and hundreds of hours of like lectures and interviews and everything, and like broke it all down. So even like when you're talking about like the redefining truth thing, I'm like, you know, part of the video is me taking his side a little bit in it.
Yeah.
And it's all anyway, so I'm not gonna just recant the damn thing because it's like 4 hours long now, but.
Yeah, no, I mean, he's one of those people who were introduced to me as like, check this guy, he has some good ideas. And then, you know, and I was like, oh, seems kind of, well, I mean, it just seems salesman-y to me. Like that's, it's really, I mean, same with Trump though. I mean, that was like, the initial thing with Trump was like, yeah, he's kind of seems like a salesman. I mean, of course he is. He's a real estate mogul. Like,
good radar you got done. Yeah,
like,
it seems to work.
Like, I don't know why anybody would think that Trump or Elon Musk. Like, yeah, he might be a salesman considering that he's a billionaire and, you know, it'll leech his money off of the government to negotiate different. Yeah, I mean, basically, he's not really an inventor of things. He's just a person who moves money around and.
Yeah, and that's the mistake people often make sometimes with my videos, right? If I make like a video about like, I don't even know, like My Little Pony, whatever, that's like the latest thing I did. And then people will be like, oh, like this is like a My Little Pony YouTuber now, they want to talk to me about that. I'm like, no, you misunderstand. Like I'm not intrinsically interested in the thing. I use subjects as ways to talk about other stuff. So it's like my interest with Jordan Peterson isn't out of like personal passion necessarily. It's just like a matrix that involves like a lot of things that I really want to talk about. And a lot of the phone stuff even, you know.
People watch an old video that I made and then like want to debate me on social media about it or want to like ask me questions. Like, yeah, like want to have like an in-depth conversation. For example, like I did one about Tesla's self-driving cars like a year and a half ago, where I like tested it and, you know, did a bunch of it and talked about like why it's kind of unreasonable to think that cars will be driving themselves completely autonomously within the next, you know, decade at least. And yeah, and I mean, to this day, people like want to debate. And it's like, man, like for me to be good at debating this, for me to be like actually like qualified to re-enter this conversation, like you have to go a year and a half back because like my brain is emptied out of everything there, and now it is in deep space imaging or, you know, something completely different because I just don't have the brain capacity to like remember everything that I was thinking about when I, you know, remember all the facts and all the conclusions that I came to when making that video, which is, you know, which sucks. Maybe smarter people can like hold on to that stuff and debate for the rest of their life.
True though, because like even like in academia, like, well, in philosophy, I'll just say, right? Like I've seen, again, this is another like and when I talk about, you know, like the subjective kind of self-destructive narcissistic kind of impulse, and when I talk about it in art, a lot of time I mean like this is why people don't get off the ground, right? Or maybe this means like, I don't know, this is just more about you and not like, maybe you're not like an artist, you know, maybe you don't have to be, right? Or like or it's that this is what's stopping you from kind of living that out in a, you know, more actualized way. But like this is another symptom of it sometimes I find with like writers or like, you know, people that have ideas is they're like I already wrote a piece on that, that's my piece. And they're just constantly, and I've met multiple people like this that are always like, I said it, so I just need people to go read that, that's my thing, and now it's gonna be like something else. And I'm like, that's not how you communicate ideas. You repeat yourself like an idiot for the rest of your life. If you ever look at like a philosopher that like made progress on something, or like Jonathan Haidt, right? Where it's Haidt. He's probably taller than me. Okay.
Watch, he's like 5'4".
I'm making it so I remember.
Yeah.
That's what I'm doing.
Yeah, put that over he's a racist, which is the hate thing that got you.
What was I? Oh yeah. Oh, okay, I got it. I just got what you said. I feel like he's racist. No, I don't think he's racist, but he's taller than me.
Yeah.
Height.
I got it.
Height, not hate.
But like him, right? You have to just keep saying the same shit. Like work on your research and then be married to it and commit yourself. And this is again, it's like not just following your whimsy and passion in this case. It's discipline and like committing to something even for all the times you don't fucking feel like it, and making yourself a little boring sometimes because you say the same thing. And like also, I mean, the danger. This is the other thing is like the willingness to pivot and stuff. Where it's like the danger is like actually commit to a message that might be wrong. That's another one that's difficult, right? And that takes a lot of humility actually. So the ignoring the audience thing is like not just this like, you know, strike of light and inspiration and above. It's also like subject yourself to criticism and evaluation by being an object that stays approximately the same instead of like constantly revising. So people just like, you know, or they're just different things rather, you know what I mean? But yeah, in order to communicate something, you have to like just keep fucking saying it. And that's one of the things that I found in the Jordan Peterson research. I also take it as like he's like a dark, like inverted shadow of my career in a lot of different ways. And that's one of the things that I kind of found is like, you know, I've always had some people say like, oh, you say the same things, or like they get a similar value out of like me, you know? And so, so I, you know, I also try to take it as like a lesson, like of, you know, how to conduct yourself if you don't want to become that, like, you know, what to do. So there's a few different like sides of that. And I guess probably the climax of that, like when they all made themselves like really, really embodied and clear, was I went to see him in Radio City, like in New York, sometime last year, dressed like this, which was fun. I remember there was some, I wanted to talk to the people there, and they didn't want to talk to me so much. I was like, but like, it was just so interesting. There's like, so I want to say, I'll say there's like three things. I'll just like pull out three. The one was I asked the dude in line about like the show that we just saw, of like his monologue, his little sermon or whatever.
You went to Jordan Peterson's like live show.
Yeah, it's live show, his performance. Yeah. And where he literally just goes on stage and monologues for
it's a sermon.
Yeah, it's a sermon. Yeah, well, it's a sermon. It's a lecture. It's his craft really.
He should have a double bassist, like doom doom doom,
like
while he's doing it.
What comedian did that?
Oh, Mitch Hedberg.
Yeah, Mitch. Yeah.
Like behind himself or as a bit on?
No, just behind it.
For the set, he had a bassist.
He would probably speak in more rhythm as a result. And he'd be like, "Yeah, the thing with women is they had skinny the boppies."
It would probably change what he's doing more, and actually, it does speak to what we're saying here, right?
Yeah.
So like. And I mean, so the first thing was that like afterwards, it is kind of like talking to a comment section and realizing a little bit of what's happening. Like the service that Jordan Peterson provides, which is one of the reasons I wanted to do this philosophical deep dive on him, is not actually like education sometimes. You know, a lot of time it's like what he's doing is like, people are enjoying the aesthetic experience of listening to a smart person be smart. And then that smartness, that performance of smartness just justifies their kind of political alignment. So they like him really because he fights the woke and he stands for sort of like traditional families. You know, this is a very common type of fan. And then I asked the dude next to me in line, I was like, well, did you like the show? And he's like, yeah. I was like, what's something like new or interesting that you like pulled out of it? And he was like, I like what he said about responsibility. And like, it wasn't even about responsibility. That's just something you've heard him say before, right?
It's like his big shtick.
And he was holding one of the books. Like I think it was like he wanted to get it signed, or I don't know what he was. Maybe he had bought it just then, or he just took it like a Bible to a sermon. But yeah, that was interesting. The second thing, and this is probably the whole thing, really. Well, okay, yeah, no.
So that guy just didn't absorb the lecture.
I don't know. Well, you're getting something out of it, but it's not what you're getting out of it isn't actually like. Isn't it a little bit depressing on some level to imagine if, let's say, I also am doing like live lectures and performances, literally the exact same business model as Peterson.
I was just thinking that, like when I've spoken at like colleges and stuff, I've been like, when you were saying that, I was applying it to myself. I was like, wonder how many people were just like, yeah, Benn Jordan, was there.
Exactly.
I know him.
And like, yeah, it would be depressing if like you realize like your kind of educational spiel, whatever the thing you were passionate about, no one was really engaging with it at all. And like there was something else, like it was just, like I say, the aesthetic quality of listening to a smart person say smart things. I like even to the concern of like if you give like your speaking thing and people are interested in it, but it's like in an ear out the other, like it doesn't stay with them. You know what I mean? Like it's just a bummer to me if someone can like read my book and see my live show and not really be able to say what I believe, you know? So that's one thing. And then the second thing was that the lecture that he gave was, he did Cain and Abel. I couldn't fucking believe it, because this is like 1998, like Maps of Meaning. It's like the same fucking thing. And this is one of the things I noticed about these people that you have this radar on, is like they're thinkers, right? So they're like, and they apply themselves to literally every subject matter. So they'll engage with literally anything, but they actually stopped doing their research like before the first time they were on camera.
Yes.
Like they're not actually engaging in new research, not doing more work, right? They're not doing, like Jordan Peterson isn't doing new academic work. He's left the institution, he doesn't care. He's just saying the same things, really. And then being basically a Twitter user and pontificating, like with the cred of like, I'm a philosopher, a psychologist, or whatever, you know?
It's strange to me too, because like I feel like the research is the fun part. Like for me at least, like I feel like I really, when I'm making my video, the part that's fun is before I write the script, before I turn on the camera, and then like, it's like, okay, well now I have to like justify it and share whatever I learned or whatever I did.
Well, it tells you something about these guys, though, right? That means that they're showmen. Like in their hearts, they are. Like they love the performance part. They like when they get laughs in their thing and stuff, you know.
Yeah.
And I can relate to that because I'm an artist and I'm a performer, you know.
Yeah.
But, like,
I was gonna say like the research part is like I love reading research and learning new things, but like I would never call like when I'm prepping for a debate, I typically try to do a fair bit of research before the debate, but I would never say that the research part is like the fun part. It's the culmination of all my work.
How do you get into a debate? Like I don't. That's a funny thing too. Is I feel like if somebody was like, "Hey man, you wanna debate?" I'd be like no. Like,
I was saying, like, what are you talking about?
Really,
it's an interesting like remnant of a different internet culture, like the debate me, bro, and it seems the atheist like rationalism. There's this moment.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a bad one to ask because I'm obviously in the industry and I really love debate. And in fact, I think what debate has become, like especially with like Piers Morgan and stuff, is really, it's like we've like taken our precious sacred child and like beat it up and cut it up and put it on like weird clothes and whatnot. And now we're like, haha, see, debate. And it's like, this isn't what it was for. Because I love Aristotle. I basically, you might hate this take, but I always say Aristotle solved philosophy and everything since then has just been like a really crappy rewrite.
Don't hate that take at all.
Okay, base.
For me, it's Greek philosophy was never my in. And so some people, they're passionate about that. They start there. But for me, it was like pursuing the things that I was passionate about and then seeing Greek philosophy just start to, I'm like, oh, they already did it all?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
It's like, you're like, oh, this is so cool. And you're like, oh, Plato did it.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
Plato did the forms already.
But you'll discover that again and again. But that's like, you know.
Which is funny to think about, to like think like somehow our generation is like the first generation to be like, what are we? Like who trying to figure that out?
No
like that's like we're the first,
before.
like wow, we're so lucky to be.
It's
like,
also
of course,
the way
like
you're
the
taught
first
it sometimes.
Thing.
It's too rote, right? Where it's like, this is what the meaning of this is, and then you actually have to live life, and then you go, oh wait, that made me think of that like famous thing, but you have to connect it to real life experience and not have it abstract.
Yeah. So tying back in to answer like what like debate essentially, how do you get into it? It's because essentially I think one of the best ways to learn and like grow, you probably again see this because of me, I tend to think in dialectics. Whenever I think of an affirmative position, I immediately start to attack it and try to tear it down to see how well that idea will hold up after scrutiny, essentially. I just think it's a really cool way to think about things. And rather than me doing this by myself in my own head, which some people can do and that's incredible, I typically want like an opponent who can do it. And then I can wrestle with my ideas. And then in like their very, very Aristotelian way, it's like I have my perception and view of the world, and then I get another person to come in and lay their perception of view. And that hopefully will broaden my own view. Like now my view can include some of theirs as well. That's why I love debate. So how do you get into it? You like join these cringy debate servers and they have hosts and they ask you, do you think this insane thing is true or false? And you'll be like, false? That's a crazy thing to say. And they're like, prove it, right? Which is kind of fun. It's kind of a sport.
Yeah.
It is a sport. It's a skill, and that's the other thing about Aristotle too. Like the rhetoricians like before him, right? Is it is also just an art that you can learn to do for its own sake. It is not really a pursuit of truth necessarily. You can also just do it.
You can be
So it's a beautiful tool that can be wielded to expand your mind if you know you're playing a game.
Exactly.
But again, it speaks to the cult of authenticity thing. No, the debate is actually the ideas fighting, and these are the avatars, and you have to like rizz up the audience and win. So it's just like a weapon. So it's not actually an exercise anymore.
Like,
exactly.
Before the first time, or the first time I came on Bridges, like before that, I like one of my things, I think I just said it on social media or something because everybody was telling me, oh my God, Destiny, Bridges, we gotta do this. And And I was like, I don't want to argue about politics. And the reason I don't want to argue about politics, like I just don't want to be in that position. And the reason I don't want to, like, it's not that I like feel like I can't voice my opinions or that my opinions aren't valid. It's that almost always, it always just turns down into, always just whittles down to this argument about what is real, like if something is real or is not real.
Right.
Like that's like, you just always end up, so it's like if we could agree to
On
only
reality
speak in
or...
probabilities, then like that, then we might actually get somewhere. But like otherwise, I mean, because if I started debating with somebody who was pro-life, let's say, like somebody who's vehemently pro-life, what we're debating is like the actual thing that we are debating, despite everything else and all the like cultural and political issues, is when does a human being become a human?
Yeah.
Like, which, guess what? There's no answer to that.
No, of course.
And so it's like, then why even have this debate anymore? Like, it's boring. It's always going to go to the same places. There's never going to be, and there's absolutely never going to be one person who makes a point and the other person go, huh, all right.
Yeah.
Done.
Yeah.
You know, like that never happens. There's too much identity attached to it.
Yeah. This is why I hate like the kind of the current form we see. Because when I first started, I actually had lots of debates that would end with like me and the other person being like, okay, yeah, I think I changed my mind about this.
Yeah,
thing,
right.
Yeah. And I think it's like a lost form. And to be clear, not just a lost form. I'm not even criticizing from this pedestal of being like, I'll admit when I'm wrong. I'll admit when I've changed my mind. Like I think even the more you spend time in the space, the more team sportsy you become, which is something I try to be really cautious of like coming from a debate space, but also really valuing like the psychology, like conversational space. Again, I try to hold these two things together and kind of make space for both because I think both are really valuable. Like, for example, my biggest critique of the debate space is that it's very hypo-masculo and competitive and stuff like that, but it actually loses one of the greatest like femme things, which is understanding, right? And it's like if you've lost understanding in a debate, there's no point in doing this anymore unless you're being a performance artist, essentially, which you can do for your own side, and there's some level of funness to, you know, I view like blood sports as the closest thing we have to like sorcery battles because it's like two minds battling it out, right? But really the issue is that like when you're watching a sorcery battle, it's not like at the end we go, oh, that one sorcerer's truth, right? Yeah. We just go, they won. Their fireballs were bigger. Yeah. Whereas in modern debate, we'd be like, see, this sorcerer said the thing that I liked the most, so they're true. Yeah. And it's like that doesn't mean that we've like acquired truth, right? Which is the sad reality of like what I think performative social media has done to the art of debate.
Yeah. And so I also think that with Jordan Peterson yet again, that like if you also never shut the fuck up, I no longer trust you. Like if you never stop, like when you do too much of something, when all you do is debate, there's no way that you can kind of retain your humanity and humility about your craft and like, you know what I mean? You can't see it. You can't even, I don't know if you can even see yourself. And that's the thing about like, you know, seeing Jordan Peterson perform is having him walk out on stage. And I'm like, wow, this guy hasn't shut the fuck up for like 30 years. Yeah. He just hasn't shut the fuck up. How do you trust a thinker that doesn't take time to think? Yeah. Like, you know, it's ridiculous. Right. Yeah. And that's how I felt. It was just autopilot when he walked on. It was just like, he could just do this forever. And there was this like there's this pantomime that I hated at the end where it's like the Q&A section came up. Where it's like this guy comes out, he's touring for his book, what is the new one? I think it's out now, the God, Who Wrestle with God. Oh, and so it's all about God.
Jordan Peterson book?
Yes.
I don't know.
It's his latest one. Yeah,
Wash your penis.
He's allowed to say that. I like when he says stuff.
That's true. You should.
And nothing wrong with that one.
You should wash your dick.
Do that, you know?
That's a good.
I think that's solid.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, a lot more young men.
I feel like that was like the beginning. Like, yeah, I feel like when everybody liked him, I feel like all of his like messaging towards men, which is generally what it was angled towards, could be like summarized as like wash your penis.
I had one. This is just a personal story, but I have like one friend that we were just like having like a what's it called? There's a smorgasbord of various cheeses. Oh, charcuterie and wine, a social time.
I was like, cheese. My brain was like so philosophy thinking mode that I was like, what is cheese?
But like, I just had one friend that revealed to me at our last like social hang that like she's just having a full-blown like 2018 12 Rules for Life style Jordan Peterson thing. She's like, no, it really makes a lot of sense. And like we're dying laughing because it's like 7 years too late.
Yeah.
It's so funny. But anyways, no, they're good. But people that get the good stuff out of it, that's great.
Yep. I was gonna say the second book literally helped save my marriage between Nick and I. Like I'm not joking. I read through the second book. The first book,
wash his penis eventually. It's like,
I did
second
not.
book, wash your penis.
Nick can wash his own penis.
Again.
Okay. Again. Well, the second one is a lot more about this like. A lot of it is actually about relationship, or maybe that's just what I took away.
No,
that's
I think it's true. By thesis, it is. It's like the chaos version. It's supposed to be more about the feminine unknown side, and that's a criticism we got like a lot when he did the order thing. Was everyone's like order and it's masculine, and you're preaching about it. So why are you obsessed with order? Like that's better. And he's like, I'm not. Like it's order and chaos. The second book is chaos. And you got to read the first book to like the textbook really. That no one's read.
Genuinely, that book unironically saved my marriage. Like it was really helpful. Like one chapter in particular of The Tyrant and the Slave was really helpful to see like the classic relationship breakdown dynamic over and over and being like, oh my gosh, Nick and I's roles are reversed here.
Right.
At our worst. Like that, and like it's critical of both the enabler and the tyrant, right? Like it's critical of both positions, right? He tells the story of this woman who's at her husband's deathbed, and he's been like a bully, their whole relationship. Not abusive, but a bully, right? In the very tradcon kind of way. And as he's dying, she's clipping his nails for him because he can't move anymore. But she's intentionally clipping as close to the wick as possible to make him bleed a little bit. And he's like, you don't want to be in a relationship. Like, first of all, you don't want to be the bully whose wife resents you so much that as you're dying, she's like just doing the tiny little things to make it a little bit worse. But you don't want to be the woman who's in that relationship making everything just a little bit worse.
Yeah, living a life
him.
of spite and destruction, like resignation, cynicism. It's kind of suicidal.
It was so
it's like,
helpful to like look at and be like, oh, I see where I do the spite pieces, and it was just So like I'm not standing. I don't basically anything of Jordan Peterson after like basically his like coma. I just like pretty hard like I don't even watch it, but just
my like the thesis of the video basically, and I'm not going to say like exactly what it is, but it is that yes, eventually. It's that I philosophically like I try to actually just focus on his first textbook, like Maps of Meaning, like that's it. I just want to do the philosophy part and like skip the self-help stuff and like I call it the before times, like but just pre 2016 is the before times basically. And so it's like if we just look at this thinker, that's like incredibly famous. For me, there's something philosophically and in like back then that I think contributes to this kind of Manichaean moralizing route that he eventually took. So I don't actually subscribe to the like post-coma narrative that a lot of people are like, oh, he changed afterwards. I'm like, it was always there. You could always see it. It got just louder, you know?
The anger.
Well, I feel like the post-coma, I mean, I feel like that's when I started enjoying, because like that's when like he
went camp,
completely lost his fucking mind, and it was just like I would like look at his tweets and just be like, wow, like wow, he's complete. This man's insane. But
in his books, so I have to say in the self-help books, he does it. I like this and I respect this is that when you're writing a self-help book, he tones it down. For the most part, like I would say in 12 Rules for Life and for 12 More Rules, like he takes on an authorial tone. Like he tries to be helpful to everybody, and it doesn't take every opportunity. It's not all screeds about the left or whatever. Like he's like, I'm in self-help book mode. Like he takes on a different voice.
He doesn't sound like your grandpa who's like just talking about Nam.
No, he's giving his best a little more.
And you're like, Grandpa, Nam was like forever ago. Like,
I was thinking of the music conference. I'm like, it's like a cool grandpa, I guess.
Cool grandpa.
Yeah.
Okay, I had one last question that was ruminating in my mind. Oh, something I've been wrestling with a lot, especially more recently, which is like this idea of bridging with opposites, right? And democracy and pushing into spaces that make you uncomfortable. And the dialectic of, and some things are intolerable, right? Like I would never, as much as I want to like understand other people, I would never like want to like spend a lot of time with like cannibalistic people that murder people to the point that I'm being like, look, like sometimes there's like a good time to cannibalize murder people, right? Like I would never want to do like the genuine version of like, what is it called? Like sane washing or whatever.
Sane washing?
Have you heard that?
Nope.
Oh, it's like this new liberal purity test right now that's driving me crazy.
People who are making it seem like it's sane by engaging with with the fact that it's real or something.
Yeah, like basically like steel manning really ridiculous positions
right.
to kind of make it seem more sane, essentially. And I think this can occur. The problem to me is like there is a time to do steel manning, and there's a time not to steel man, and it's really hard to know the difference, right? So like I've very much part of like why Steve and I separated in Bridges. There's a number of reasons, but one of them is that we have, you can probably tell, very different approaches to how we want to engage with Republicans and people that we vehemently politically disagree with, right? And the problem is that I'm aware that the nuking everything to the ground approach might be that time, you know, it's possible because there's time for revolution, right? I'm not opposed to the Civil War, for example. I think that was a thing that had to happen. And so, not that I want Civil War, I mean like the literal American Civil War had to occur, and the revolution was a good thing, right? How do you think about engaging with Republicans? Because I feel like I keep on wanting to like talk to them and understand them. The reality is that Trump had this massive popular vote. People resonated with him, and it's fundamental that we understand why that is. And then I'll like talk to my neighbor who's a like very insane Republican, unironically wants me deported. And he'll like talk about the tariffs, and I'm just like, I can't. You don't understand anything about money. I don't understand anything about money, and I know that you don't understand anything about money. So I guess like how do you guys solve this? Because I'm genuinely querying the answer. I don't know how to do this because I feel like I keep trying to do the empathy piece, and then I just get so frustrated that I'm like, now I'm like blowing up the whole empathy goal. But like, there's also a time where you don't, right? I've worked with child abusers. I've worked with like really brutal people. And I very much have this saying of like, empathy isn't just understanding. It's understanding but not excusing, right? Like that is empathy. And so I can empathize with most Republicans by not excusing their behavior. But increasingly, it feels like I'm getting into the situation where I'm like, I don't feel like I'm talking to...
Cora!
Please, no.
I don't feel like I'm talking to...
I feel so bad sometimes because the dog can notice that I'm not giving them the same amount and they go to me and they're like, where is it? And I'm like, I'm sorry.
It's time.
I'm sorry.
But I feel like less and less like I'm talking to somebody who's got a child abuser past and confronting them with like, your kids don't owe you a relationship. And I know that that's hard to hear, right? I've had to have those conversations with clients. I feel like I'm more talking to my clients where I'm like, your dead ex doesn't live in our basement. He's not there. You're having a mental break, right? And it's like the way that I engage in empathy with somebody who doesn't have a connection to reality is not the same way that I do with somebody who does. They're just coping and trying to excuse and justify things that they feel ashamed about or things that they're angry about and hate, right? And so I don't know how to solve this because increasingly I'm like, is everyone just becoming increasingly like unironic psychotic? Like, did COVID just melt everyone's brains a little bit and their ability to even grasp reality is kind of broken? Like, I don't know. I just kind of treat my neighbor like a crazy old man now. I'm just like, okay, I should say his name. Okay, Matt. Like, his name is not Matt.
When we were in Houston, I mean, just a random one, like when we were in Houston, me and Cameron went to a flea market. And there was some guy that was like selling like cowboy boots or, you know, something just random at a flea market. And we were looking at it now, and me and Cameron were like in some other conversation. And I saw this, it was some sort of thing, some sort of Rambo thing, like some old vintage Rambo Sylvester Stallone thing. And the guy goes, yeah, well, you want a real hero. And he opens his jacket, and we're like, what the fuck? And he opens his jacket and he pulls out a Trump trading card that had him dressed up like Rambo, and
Trump dressed up like Rambo.
Yeah, and he was like, "Who do you think's?" Or no, I was like, "Who do you think would win in a fight between the?" Because he was like, "This is the real hero," and I was like, "Okay, who do you think would win, Rambo or him?" And he was like, "Trump," and I was like, "All right."
Like and then
whatever, you know, it's just like, well, why even fucking make like? But the funny thing is like. Nope, it was almost as if it happened so fast that we had to go back in time and be like, how fucking crazy is it to like sell boots at a flea market that is like 99% Hispanic people? He was like one of the few white people there. And then see another white person and show them a trading card of Donald Trump, somebody who you support politically, with muscles. Like, what the fuck? Like, what, like, I don't, like, the only thing that we could really think is, like, I guess he just wanted to, like, talk shit about Mexicans and thought we might be a good, like,
He was
buddy
kind of
for
like,
that.
are you cool?
Like
Yeah,
he was checking if you would code switch and like how
and,
you,
like,
And that's a
you were
lot
in
of
the
the,
circle.
you know, a lot of this, the silliness is very clearly like it's loyalty testing. Like it's like, you know, I with this, you know, take this man and put him in like a dog fight. I think he's probably going to bet on the obviously larger dog. Like I don't know if that cognitive thing is gone. It's more the like I'm demonstrating like my, you know, culture or like my allegiance or whatever. You know what I mean?
But like the idea that this person is somebody to be politically debated with is a waste of time. You may as well debate with a flat earther.
Yep.
Like, because it's like, okay, well, like the probability that the earth is round is so much higher that this is not really worth talking about. But this person, like this person with the trading card and many of the people that you encounter online, they're clowns. And if we had Marjorie Taylor Greene here, it would get a lot of views, but I don't want her here because she's a fucking clown.
Right.
She doesn't, we're not actually going to get any useful information out of her because A, she's playing a part, and B, she's a bully. And like, and people who are bullies, when I run into a bully, I just want to punch them or I want to like embarrass them. And that's not what I want to do on my platform ever.
Yeah.
And so it's like, that's how I feel about that. On the other end, which is really funny because like, I feel like if we were to have a Bridges episode and Marjorie Taylor Greene was going to come on it, I would probably try to talk you out of it. If you had like a convicted fucking pedophile who wanted, I would be like, yeah, that's because I'm going to learn something from that. Your audience is going to learn something from that. And more importantly is instead of just like saying that this person deserves to die, this person's the worst, is worse than a murderer, that doesn't help children. Saying that does not help victims at all. Understanding how that person became a pedophile is what helps children. And so it's like that's something that actually needs opening up, but it's just really difficult and repulsive to do it for most people. So they don't want to do it. And it's much easier to just say, well, no, I don't, all pedophiles should die, you know, or just like, you know, make it this binary thing where it's like, well, then like, yeah, if you pretend to care about children that much, you need to change that priority a little bit. You need to do something that's a little bit more difficult to look at that because, yeah, numbers haven't lowered since we've put them in prison longer, which would mean that like maybe we need to actually dive into this and look into it. And because but we can all agree that it's wrong to abuse children. Like I can't think of anybody. I've never met a person in my life who doesn't agree with that. Yeah.
Yep.
And so like, maybe this is something that, so it is an interesting twist at the end of this monologue of mine here. It is an interesting twist to think that like I would rather have a pedophile than Marjorie Taylor Greene sitting next to me.
Well, that's the other thing, is one of them is an active propagandist. Is the other person like actually just like a side of humanity that you are afraid to look at? Yeah. That you have this like, you know, kind of knee-jerk, again, it's like, I don't want to look at it, so you'll just say this thing that I think they should all just be murdered. Which is obviously not a sincere engagement with maybe if you're worried about that problem, how would you like mitigate it? And what do you actually think? You know what I mean? Like,
maybe, just one last thing, maybe a more fun way of looking at that is if you try to think of your expected answer if you asked Marjorie Taylor Greene what she thinks about pedophiles, like pretty easy. You could like you could almost perfectly predict it verbatim. And then ask a pedophile what they think of Marjorie Taylor Greene. Right. And I have no fucking idea.
That was a like, scientist in you? You were just like,
no, that's really interesting because I think the reality is that the way that you engage, like this is essentially some level of a platforming question as well, right? Which is essentially, it's not a simple answer. It has to be nuanced, right? In the way that treating crime or addiction has to be nuanced and individualized, right? Because when I think about the guy at the flea market, for example, a lot of my work in the red pill space, for example, is being essentially that one good liberal. So I don't abandon any of my liberal principles, but I emphasize
dysfunction for people.
But I emphasize things like, men do have it tough. There are things that are difficult. You know, like I essentially go, your feelings are fair. Feelings are just feelings. It's fine that you feel that way. But this isn't actually true. Like this one thing isn't true. And also like if you hold this belief and this belief simultaneously, you're just being inconsistent. Like these two things can't coexist in the same moral principle system, right? And I've wrestled with this a lot, but we had a really good conversation with Dr. K where he said, like, one thing that's really important to think about is obviously, like, I'm never going to change Myron's mind, but that's not why I'm talking to Myron. I'm not trying to be like, maybe I'll convince Myron to, like, you know, change his mind and not hate women.
You mean Matt? Or wait, who are you talking about?
Myron.
Okay.
Myron Gaines.
Sorry. Okay. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, not my neighbor.
I don't really know who that is.
Fresh and Fit.
Yeah. So I was not.
Yeah.
I think I got the face though.
Right. He's an performative arbiter for the audience I'm actually trying to reach.
Right.
But Dr. K kind of pointed out, if the viewers watching this go, there's no good women and there's no good liberals, to finally, well, there's one. It's like, you've actually changed a fundamental belief. Because if there's one, there can always be more, right? This is like very much how I orient myself towards like the red pill. But that doesn't mean that that's how I should orient myself towards Republicans, right? Like, to assume that the model that might be effective with red pill men and what seems to be like a salient, like it works really well, isn't necessarily what's the approach with Republicans, right? Where if I go to my crazy neighbor Matt and I understand all of his feelings of why he distrusts Democrats, and I'm like, yeah, you know, they have done bad things, and I don't love everything Democrats have done, and I am very critical of like their fakeness. In fact, probably too critical, and not critical enough of Republicans because I love the left and I care about it. It feels like for him, that will never make him go, oh, well, there's at least one good liberal.
Right.
He'll just kind of be like, see, I'm right. And then when I push back, he basically goes like, la, 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 la. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to engage. I don't want to engage. And so then it's like, okay, well, I'm appealing to men that hate women through their feelings, essentially, because they won't listen to my facts until I care about their feelings. But I don't know if I'm convinced anymore that the same can be done with like Republicans, because their feelings, even if I can satiate them, don't change the fact that we're in different realities.
Yeah.
But it's like, in my mind, I'm like, but shouldn't it? So I'm missing something. I mean, basically, I know I'm missing something.
I feel like bullying back in a weird, not bullying back, I don't want to say the word bullying, but I feel like there's like maybe my stature and voice and just the way I present myself comes off a little more like what, you know, so one of those people would consider alpha or something like that. But I think that there is something too to like hearing somebody say something, oh, this is happening, and say, shut the fuck up. You're like, you have no fucking idea what you're talking about. Like, just being that assertive about it often changes it. And I think like someone like Bill Burr is a good example of that.
Very
where like somebody who like has a more masculine, like aggressive tone where like, yeah, I mean, if you say, we would think, we have no idea what he's like in real life, but we would think that like if you know, said something like, no, I think Elon's got some good points, Bill Burr would just fucking tell you to shut the fuck up. And like, and then you'd be like, yeah, okay.
But the thing is about that though, and this speaks to the alphaness, I think all this is real, like identity politics plays like a role in this, like it's real, right? I notice like even for me, like talking about sometimes like religious stuff or like self-improvement sorts of things, right? There's like a really large, like very far left and very queer audience that maybe doesn't hear this. But like I'm saying it literally just because the way I look like does something, you know what I mean? And there's like there's a mixture of these sort of status signals and like kind of identifiers with different communities that like this is true, this matters, like it affects your message, you know?
Absolutely.
So like also with me, it's like part of why I studied philosophy the way that I did, which was just autodidactic and at home, and it was like, yeah, I was out of passion, but also it's so that I could speak the language of some of these guys, you know what I mean? Like I could, you know, I don't want to say this because it's kind of scary prospect in some ways, and I'm not really sure, but like if I spoke to Jordan Peterson, right? I know all the stories he knows. Like I read his books, like I know the stuff, you know what I mean? We can both talk pragmatism. It's just I will use the exact same language to point it at like, well, obviously the non-binary people are a pragmatic category. Obviously, right? Like, what do we, you know what I mean? Like, what are we doing? Like, rendering yourself able, that in and itself is also like a kind of status thing.
Yeah.
And so I think what's part of that is, for you, and something I think is important actually, is demonstration of competence. Okay, so here's the thing. It's like the democracy, it's about persuasion. Right? It's about persuading the voters. Like that's the job, right? Because the whole point is instead of violence, we're going to use persuasion. And then what we're having a conversation here about a little bit is getting a little bit, we're starting to forget that that's like the democracy. And I'm saying not like us, but like the democracy is forgetting that because you're realizing that in some cases, it's probably just straight up real where it's like, I can't persuade Marjorie Taylor Greene. It's not possible. And I think we are definitely seeing the rise in America of a Maoist cult of personality that is get to the point point of like, now we have to fight these guys, because I think that's the close. I don't know. It's fascinating to me that I haven't heard anyone say this, that like the person in history that Trump reminds me of the most is clearly like Mao. Like clearly this cult of personality thing, like the only line between like, you know, their kind of, the way things played out for them is, you know, when Mao was out of power, he just actually went on the airwaves and said, it is legal to kill these guys. Go do it. Like, these are not the real rulers. And Trump just like, pussied out because like, he didn't quite want to go that step yet, you know? So like, but like to think he would do, like, imagine like if he said that, like he can mobilize people. Like he has that power, this like, you know, like black eye hypnotism power. And this is just something that I'm living through in my lifetime. And there's a point where that's just outside of my control. Like I'm just watching this. We're in this part of the karmic cycle. Like this is happening and there's no wiggling around that. To that end, you know, the second Trump presidency, incumbent kingdom, like I am more politicized. Like I'm like, it's time to do some work and to do that work. But I think that that work does look like persuasion, because that's the thing, right? Where it's like, it is half the population voted for him. So it's like, now it's like, I can't, this is my nation. I say my nation broadly as like a North American, you know, I guess we're becoming quite more distinct and separate now. But
or you might be a state. So, you know, one or the other.
Canadian, not finding the joke funny. I was like, but yeah, I think the task is like persuasion. And to that end, like when you talked about like, how do you change people's facts? I don't think it is fucking about facts. It's about persuasion. I don't think it's ever really necessarily been about facts. Like we have this assumption that it's about rational actors and appealing to their rationality.
I've always said it's about feelings.
I think it's more than feelings. This is the thing that I can take from like the, you know, this incredible escalation and crystallization of the cult of personality, like political movement that is like Trump's empire or whatever. Like it is speaking to a yearning for mythology. Like, I think that's really, it's not even, because people are making this mistake that people have the wrong facts. They're so crazy that they believe these crazy facts. But even flat earthers aren't doing that. Like, they don't believe the fact that the earth is flat. They're participating in a community and like this kind of mythology that is like a mode of being, and it gives them parties to go to, and it gives them meaning and shit. And so like, that's why you go like, this is why, and same with like, you know, when you have like Supreme Leader Putin or like Supreme Leader Mao, you're like, and also I bet he could beat everyone in an arm wrestle, and he's the fastest runner, and he can jump the highest. You just start doing all this shit because it's not because you believe those facts. It's like you're being swept up in a mythology. And so I think that mythology actually is the way to appeal to people. And that's the kind of persuasion you have to do, is performance. We're in the age of attention. It is like kind of about this. And so this comes in a lot of forms, but I don't think it is about even sometimes like debate or getting your facts through with someone. I think it is about like performance and influence. So like genuinely you being so successful and multivariate in your like many endeavors, you know money, you are competent. I think that's the strongest message. And I think that's where Jordan Peterson's just right, but the left needs him. You know what I mean? Because we have to demonstrate competence and like a better story. And I think that's the thing, right? Like that's why I can move people farther left. I've seen that I'm capable of doing that, right? You are capable of discrediting these people by saying, man, fuck you, but that's your charisma, right? And why is that? I think it is the demonstration of competence. I think it's quality and it's performance and it's enchanting people, and that's what you have to do, is not even convince them, but like, you know, so like, I really do think like, even like Mark Carney, right? The new Canadian Prime Minister, I hope he wins. And I think one of the big strengths of him, like bringing this Liberal Party back to life and as a force that could, you know, help our country and kind of, you know, defend against Trump and be a force in the world that like creates a sort of cultural identity and like a kind of mythology that like kind of combats this like nefarious bottomless one, I think like is just the competence. Like the competence and the snark, that's what he's serving, and that's what feels good, right? It's like, I'm obviously competent. I think you gotta, and this is another thing where it's like the left kind of having this sort of, anyone that has like $1 million is like part of the enemies, right? Not being able to distinguish between like, first of all, a person that that a person, like, first of all, a person with $1 million, congratulations, you need that to retire. Everybody needs that to retire.
Yeah,
you need
that's
that.
a low
Right?
Yeah,
so that's that, and it's low. Yeah, no. So there's that. So first of all, $1 million, like, okay, so that for a random individual person, even, it's like you need that. And then when let alone talking about like a business or like an organization that, like, you know, that takes in like $20 million, but it's not like personal. It's not in your bank account. Like, this is operations money. Some things cost that much money.
Net worth of $1 million is like, oh, so you live in the suburbs, like, you know, that's like not
exactly,
a huge,
right? And so like we need to get over our like allergy. I'm speaking on behalf of the leftists. Like, get over our allergy to like successful people and successful institutions, because you fucking need those. That's what you're trying to build, right? And to distinguish between that and like how much $1 billion is, you know?
Yeah.
And so that's like, and because I don't think that, I think that's the way to convince that person too. I think that's the way to break into the heart of this person that's like, you know, you want to see my Trump like action figure or whatever, is like, you can't really directly do it necessarily. You have to kind of be cool and successful and strong and like and be like united, like have a vision.
Represent something.
You actually have to represent something. And then, you know, you see those people, like those people do exist, like the splitting at the voting booth being like for abortion and for Trump, and the people that like vote for AOC and vote for Trump, like those people are here. And I just think that, yeah, that's yearning for mythology, you know what I mean? And they kind of say it's like authenticity. I don't know.
I would say it's like fundamentally not. If you're yearning for mythology, you're yearning for like some level of greater noun and meaning.
Well, I think it's that greater meaning though. I think that people do detect it, and this is again using like Petersonian verbiage here, like, but is like the really real. Like the why am I alive real? You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's like purpose.
And that's the, you know, that's a value. That's why he like muddies the definition of truth, right? It's like, what about that thing? What about that animating thing? The thing that like makes people act, that changes the world, you know? I think people want that, and they're getting a version of that with this. And then the only way to fight is you have to, you know, provide something like meaningful and exciting. And like, you know, I don't know, like I'm tampering out here, but like, it's enchantment. I think it's enchanting. Like, you don't even persuade, definitely not rationally, and not even validating their feelings to like persuade an individual person. I think you have to enchant people. Yeah. Like with majesty, like performance, like magic, like God, you know? Because that's what they're doing. Like we're entering almost like a monarchy phase of like collective consciousness where we're yearning for kings. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so like, you know, I think that, and then the version of that is pro-democracy is like, this is why I talk a little bit about like culture. About having like high status figures that you're not constantly trying to rip apart, that you're happy that they're successful and that are enchanting and they're exciting and you want to emulate them. And that's what I think the left fucking doesn't have right now, or like they need to build, is have there's no people.
Unifying thing that it represents that people are fighting for. It's just like a rejection and a fighting against some other greater noun, but there's nothing to rally behind truly, like at all, in a way that's meaningful, right? Like if Kamala and Biden go like, rally behind us, we want to keep everything the same. Everyone's like, no, we don't want that.
That's not where the hunger is.
That's not where the hunger is. So it's an enchanting promise of living a better life.
Well, I think that like just due to the rights, the way that they fight is almost entirely using fear. And and they gain a lot of success from it. And so I feel like Joe Biden winning the presidency in 2020 was like, it made a lot of sense. Because like it's a return to normalcy. It's like, okay, we're exhausted from, and like right now, like I would find it hard to believe that a lot of people on the right aren't exhausted from Trump. I mean, literally, I looked at the news this morning and he's threatening nuclear war against Iran, and it's like, shut the fuck up. Like wherever you are on this political spectrum, after all the shit with the tariffs, after everything else, like people do get Trump exhaustion, and that shows like that's what turned Georgia into a purple state, is people are just tired of it. Whereas before that they were deeply Republican here.
I don't know, and the thing is, it's just not a linear, rational decision. Like I think it really is. You have to put like that's what my feeling has always been about Trump. That upset me just in 2016. The kind of maybe the first time I was really kind of politicized, like watching that happen. And it was like my frustration was like, I mean, it's just so dark. It was just so dark. Something like so dark in us was like preyed upon, and it's the laughter and it's like the excitement. And then watching other people, like the thing that depressed me a lot was like that moment when like Joe Biden was like, shut up, man. Like he had that thing. And it made me sad because it was like, my feeling has always been, it's like, you gotta just put like a very competent and impressive adult in the room.
Yeah.
And then you have to behave like that. You know what I mean? And
but
so
I guess that's sort of that Bill Burr thing I was talking about, where he was just like, would you shut up, man? And he actually, you know, sort of sat on Trump's head for a second, and it really made Trump look tiny.
But I don't think you can win in like that. I don't think we can win like that. And that's not, I don't think that's the, like, I think that's a degenerative impulse. That's the attention impulse. So I feel like what wins that inevitably is going to be like Elon Musk and Trump. Like, I think if you're playing the attention game, if you're playing like, you know, just purely like trying to dunk, like that's the version, that's violence to me. It's the same thing, right? Because it's just the, you know what I mean? It has to be an appeal to beauty. And like put that beside someone, like that's what's happening right now with Mark Carney and Pierre Poilievre, right? Is like, that's actually the prevailing narrative. It's kind of working, is Mark Carney's coming in like this very competent person with a ridiculous amount of experience and is like being excessively pragmatic. And then he's being like, and Pierre Poilievre, all he can say is like complain about like Trudeau. It's just fear, fear, fear. And people sometimes when you, and this is my belief, this is my faith, I guess, that I'm staking my life on, that gives my life some meaning and promise for the future, is my belief is when you put something beautiful beside something that is ugly, people want to respond to the beautiful thing. And I know that's insane faith, but like, that's what I think, you know? So that's my hope. That's
a good question for me, the born American, in the middle of two born Canadians. What
this looks like an album cover, by the way. I realized a while ago, like this is one of your album covers.
Yeah. What
this wasn't on purpose.
So I guess like how did it, like, well, I guess like starting from you, since you currently live in Canada and I'm assuming you're a proud Canadian. How did it feel to hear a serious threat talk conversation about Canada becoming a state? Like how, like, cause when you said like, oh, that's still a new joke. It actually made me think, you know, I don't think I ever like had, I mean, the way that I think of it is it's obviously going to be very differently than the way that a Canadian thinks of it, probably, maybe. But like how did it, was there like, did you entertain the idea?
No. It was fucking horrible and heartbreaking.
I guess, okay, well, a better question. If it came from Obama, would you entertain the idea?
Still insulting. I mean,
that's what I'm wondering. Like, would you entertain the idea if it came from Obama?
Canadian identity, I have never seen it so like strong. I've never in my whole life actually, because we are a little bit like passe about a lot of that thing, and like generally we're on a path towards increased friendship and integration with America. That's generally the world, and generally like we have this kind of performative, well, we're not America, anti-Americanism just kind of baked into our cultural identity, but really though, like people feel positively about America. There's like, those are our friends. There's like extremely stalwart trading partners. We go there for shopping and we do business there and we go there for concerts and it's great. And when you meet, we meet Americans, like, I mean, they're just like, they're the same culture fundamentally, you know?
We're just a little better than you guys. That's typically
that's the feeling, is we're calmer and we're a little morally better and a little nicer and stuff. No, but the heartbreak is that like the American, I don't know, is the hostility. It's very obviously not coming from the American people. Like, and literally, like I was just in like upstate New York recently, and just like seeing people. I know this is very north and a very liberal kind of place, but people were just like, "How are you?" Same question, like, "How are you feeling?" You're like, "We don't know what to do. Like, we're so sorry." You know, like genuinely, like they're like, "We don't have a problem with you," and I got to be the Canadian representative, be like, "And we don't have a problem with the American people, like at all." This is such a prime example of what we were talking about earlier, is where Trump literally clearly just made a joke. Like with Justin Trudeau, like, hey, become the 51st state, and then it gets a reaction. And he's like, oh, this is about me now. And he's like, okay, so I'll keep pulling the threads that get big reaction. And so, just knowing that as the world kind of crumbles and it goes to fall in on him and he becomes the most important person in the universe and he's holding these levers that are making big things move, he's like, something's gonna happen. You know what I mean? If I never admit I'm wrong and I just keep, doing everything gets a big reaction. And so the terrifying, sad thing is I'm scared of what your country's like doing to itself. And like, I can't believe for the first time in my entire fucking life that America is not my country's best friend. Like, I can't believe that. Like, the world has changed and it's not gonna go back for like a while, because we're going to change our whole fucking economy. Maybe we have to. We can't trust it.
Well, I'm a big fan of state rights. Like I do think that states should be allowed to be different than from, you know, I do think that there should be less laws that force states to like it. And I even though, and I think that a lot of times that works in the favor of what I believe in politically, and a lot of times that works very against it. Like, you know, I could see an argument for like a state where 70 or 80% of people are pro-life that maybe, you know, they should have the right to,
think about this too. It's democracy,
should consider a
honestly.
murder. Okay.
I actually talked to, I was even just, I was speaking to like a law student, like at Harvard. I remember when Roe v. Wade was overturned.
Yeah.
And one of the things that they said is like, and this is very left people, all of them, right? And they're like, we all kind of knew that it was a little, you know what I mean? Getting that in there on the federal level was a little, you know?
Yeah.
Like from a
knew,
legal
like,
perspective,
Roe
you know?
like, you're like,
and so it's like you can strong arm it for
Yeah.
like the greater good because you believe it's moral, that's fine. But sometimes it's also, it's like, listen, if let's just make it purely theoretical, 90% of like a country is like, we morally believe this is wrong and they vote for that. I'm like, well, that's what that is, I think, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, but so like
then you have to persuade people.
Yeah.
That's the actual task. You haven't. That's the thing, and that's the thing is like it fell apart because they didn't do the real job, which was actually persuade people.
Yeah.
You know, it wasn't done. So it was.
And so, yeah, within those state rights, like we do, you know, as America is a republic with 50 democracies, right?
Yeah,
so,
right.
like that's what it was initially supposed to be.
Yeah.
Like, I get really depressed and anxious at borders, like land borders. Like for some, like the Canadian border mostly because like they do shit like cut open your air mattresses and crap like just from like touring where you're just like that, you know,
right.
like,
Oh my God,
but,
that sucks.
but Mexico, like like a few years ago, I drove with a friend from like one end of the country, so basically like along the wall, the entire Mexican wall, and it just felt so, like, you know, culture down, unless you're like in a major city, the culture near the Mexican border, like in southern Texas and southern Arizona, like southern New Mexico, everybody speaks Spanish, like because they were Mexican, like at one point, and so it's like the only difference is that a long time ago, some powerful people decided that this is where these people are going to be of this class and these people are going to be of another, and so it's kind of funny because like when I heard that ridiculous rhetoric of like, well, we'll just make Canada a state, it was like, part of me was like, just that like, I guess, more libertarian part of me was just like,
yeah, borders are dumb.
yeah, like even a broken clock is right twice a day,
right.
You know, but when you think about it, like when you think about what we are actually worried about with China and what we're actually like, I mean, in the 90s and early 2000s, the European Union was actually a massive threat. It's like, whoa, you guys can't all just become one fucking currency. Like, geez, what's happening? It's like, well, yeah, like there's a lot of people south of America that want to come north to work, and there's a workforce participation in America and in Canada is at historic lows.
Yeah,
it's like all of this makes perfect sense.
It does,
if
and
we were one gigantic, because like,
and culturally too, like there's the line, like you said with Mexico, right? The line doesn't change culture. The culture is geographical, so it's like Toronto and New York are quite similar. They're very different, obviously, but like really, like especially like, you know, upstate New York and Ontario where I live, they're the fucking same.
Yeah,
and
it's
Seattle
not like
and Vancouver,
people in
it's fine. And so I'm so pro that. I'm 50% of my audience is in America. I care a lot about America. I'm invested in it, you know, and I want to work there. So like, I would have only cared about like deepening the ties. The thing that I think is, of course, like in an objective, rational vacuum somewhere, we're talking like a theoretical conversation about deepening the trenches between or not trenches, the opposite of that, bonds between our countries and stuff. But like a clear thing, again, that sometimes it surprises me, just like the discourse that Trump manages to generate around himself where people aren't pointing to the most obvious thing. Where it's like, he's trying to bring imperialism back. Like, that's the thing, right? That's the thing he likes, the idea he could acquire more land. He's just trying to normalize. So Canada, Greenland, he's like, that's great, right? So of course he's going to be on the side of like, you know, blowing out the Gaza Strip and just the building. Because like, he wants imperialism to be back because he's a monarch. Like, that's his clear thing. So we're not talking at all about the ties, the relationship between our countries. We're just talking about active aggression and subjugation and like empire, you know? And so you can't entertain that for a second. Like, this is you need strong cultural
reactions. There's a very big difference between like, for example, like, because I'm from Alberta, right, which is like, obviously Canada's very culturally homogenous in a lot of ways, but also culturally distinct in that like a lot of prairie provinces are very frustrated with like Ontario and Quebec, for example, because we basically have no say or power at a federal level, despite being some of the most important like economic resources.
I like how Cora is just introducing herself to the world as an idiot right now. Like that's just like literally like anybody watching this is like that dog is dumb. What's happening?
And Lucy's like, God, I hate her so
Yeah.
much.
Yeah, there's some, and by the way, in Alberta and a few places, there's a little bit of like, yeah, yo, America. Like they're very
Alberta would be a
aligned
lot
with
more
the
open to it.
Republicans.
Most Albertans at home, when they hear that, there's a frustration at the imperialist kind of, we can just breach your sovereignty and there's nothing you can do about it, na boo boo kind of thing, where it's kind of like, that's literally true at a military level.
Yeah.
Like America could just dumpster Canada.
Yeah,
Like
you
no
have a big
question about
rocket
it.
launcher, like that's true.
No, like no question about it. In fact, America can dumpster any country that it wants to because it traded essentially its position in the hierarchy at the top for no healthcare but high military spending, and NATO and everyone else got to trade getting to not spend on military.
We contracted. It was a blood pact. That's the thing that first complicated my sort of like my broadly just like anarchic, like communist, like just leftist without having examined much. And that happened because I got a YouTube channel. People started repeating stuff I said. So it's just a responsibility. I was like, I should read the book.
Yeah.
But like, that was one of the first things that complicated for me was I was like being like, yeah, America, empire. And like, it's, like the police state of the world. It's bad. Its military bases are everywhere. And I realized I was like, oh, my country just took that.
No,
we're
it's
just,
like,
we're just like, thank you. Like you just contracted that to be ours and we just don't have it.
And it's tough because the reality is that like if the world was a different place, we wouldn't need police and we wouldn't need global police, but the world is not a different place and there is some need for it because there like are people who have hatred enough that they want to kill. And we're in America, like we see that even within America, right? And so it's this really difficult, tenuous relationship where Alberta and very much is kind of like a neglected golden child in many ways, where it's gives. There's actual
economic
repayment systems that go out. So Albertans are very, very frustrated with Canada. And so a lot of my family at home is like, honestly, if we could vote, I'd probably vote for it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, you won't get your universal health care. And they're like, oh, right. That's like the main thing where Albertans are like, oh, but we really like universal health care.
People don't like losing things, and that's good. That's a good thing that could be leveraged and persuaded people.
Because I think like most of like the pushback on that, like again, it was Trump and it was him being an asshole, and like there was no logic behind it. But I think most of the pushback on that, and most of the pushback you ever hear about like unifying countries is always like, well, you can't just rob us of our cultural identity. And it's like, well, go to Louisiana and go to like a Cajun area and like ask them if their cultural identity is robbed because they're American. It's like, it's literally no. I guess it burns a little part of me to think that like that somebody thinks that their cultural identity is decided by government.
Well, I know that J.J. McCullough also obviously feels similarly about all this, but like the real thing that, because I was trying to understand, because I wondered, because he's all pro kind of Canada-America integration, and I'm like, okay, but he's very anti-Trump, and so I'm like, so how is he going to feel about this? And I think the thing is like, and this is just responding to the state of the world, like very tragically, some of the things we care about are being hurt. You know what I mean? So like, I think that's the thing, right? Is that like this thing of like, the perhaps like the wisdom inside of like, we should not, like the libertarian in you and the anti-border person in you is being harmed by this kind of act of aggression that's the most toxic. It's making your beliefs look bad. It sucks, And so I don't know, that's my, I feel the same way about like Christianity, right? It's like that, but like I'm not going to leave the room like as a Christian because Christians are embarrassing me and like they're really damaging something that I really believe in. I was like, no, I have to fight you.
Yeah. And I think like in a lot of ways, like there are a lot of places where healthcare is not that bad in the United States in comparison to others, or like, or I mean, whatever, get an AR-15 and walk into a Walmart in California and let me know how that goes for you. Cause like you're going to end up in prison. Like there's a lot of places in America that aren't really America-ish in terms of like how you think of all the bad things with America. But yeah, anyway.
Yeah, I'm also out of my pay grade, so it might be.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a pretty natural stopping point actually, because it's. I think the problem when it comes to like figuring out bridging between these communities and peace and like all these like big broad questions is that like if we had solved that problem, we wouldn't be here. Like philosophy would end, even though it did end with Aristotle in many ways. Maybe Aristotle's got the answer that I'm like looking for, But
history ended too. It turned out it started again. So
yeah. And so it's like, you know, if the answer was simple, we wouldn't like be wrestling it. And I guess the best that we can do is like try to wrestle with it honestly, and give space to others who are also, if they are presumably wrestling with it honestly, to allow them to do so, and be willing to still unify underneath them, I guess, to some degree.
If we're not living in a simulation, and if we are actually like fleshy human beings on this planet that's spinning and soaring through space, then every single thing that we think of to try and improve the world around us will be forgotten when the last human dies. So it doesn't really matter anyway, does it?
I disagree.
Yeah,
no,
me
word
too.
from our sponsor.
I disagree mostly because I think we render meaning in and of ourselves. Like, I think just because it ends with us, it doesn't make it
Well,
less
yeah, and I
meaningful.
also think that like what we think reality is wildly going to be wrong from how it actually is. Like, you know, I don't think we actually understand.
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, just doing something within my lifetime that makes things better sounds really good.
Did this dog, my idea of allowing the dogs on the podcast has really turned out bad in the last 5 minutes.
yeah.
Like,
You get
it's,
another
not a
thing
good
that I
life
was right
strat.
about.
yeah.
As soon as she came in with the toy, I was like, this is not
Yeah.
gonna
Well,
end
she
well.
brought a stick in here and tore it to shreds.
And this, by the way, is the problem I have with dog people. Well, for one, it's I just don't have the love in my heart like that.
Yeah.
But the bigger thing is that like hanging with dog is that like the dogs actively subtract sometimes from the human connection.
Yeah.
Where I'm like, I show up to like I have to go show up to hang out with somebody. There's one time I shouldn't tell this story. I don't know. But like you know, I met my partner's at the time's parents, right? And so this was the introduction, like that introduction, and these two big fucking dogs half the time was like Stacy, 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 and I'm like, I'm supposed to shake your hand and get to know you right now. Like this is my
Yeah.
whole life, you know?
Yeah.
Although, to be fair, like a good counterpoint to that is it's just like kids. Like a kid
Like
would come in
kids?
here with a fucking stick and break it all over the floor.
you train
and be
kids a little bit
"Dad,"
better.
The
you
kids are
know.
growing. You can have a relationship with the
Oh,
kids
yeah.
and talk to them and more
Right.
increasingly over time. It's
By the time
different.
they're
There's
like 8
humans.
to 10, they'll stop.
Yeah.
Whereas a 10-year-old dog won't.
Even like,
I
but
mean-
even like a 6-year-old, you can have a whole conversation with them, like about something. Like, they're I don't know. That's good.
Dogs
but,
won't take care of you when you're elderly.
That's true.
Well,
they
maybe
do
they
make
will
you
if
happy,
you're
but you
like
guys
an
are
Inuit or something.
bad podcast accessories.
It's fine.
You're
Other
fine.
people can have
You're a
dogs.
bad podcast accessory for sure.
Yeah, Lucy said, yeah, fuck Cora.
All right. Well, as you predicted, the dogs derailed the conversation by the end and left us.
God
to a-
talking. It's God talking. I got to be open to that too.
Yeah.
Meant to be. You know, there's things I don't understand about it.
You know, maybe God brought them in to naturally end. the
Well,
podcast.
Lucy said that Cora was born out of Satan's ass, so take that.
Yeah, you got upcoming shows. Tell us about them.
Yeah.
Actually, you know what? Can I just kick Cora out and then we can do the.
Here, come here.
All right.
Tell us about your new tour.
Really, it just gets really Jimmy Kimmel for a second.
Yeah.
All right. So what's coming up for you? What are you looking forward to?
Well,
Where do people find you?
maybe I can make this like a more holistic statement. I just think it's important to be focused building things like building businesses and building like institutions and being with people in real life and kind of talking about these ideas and building kind of new ways of thinking and new culture in this time. So one of my versions of that is like I'm doing these lectures, like these live lectures, straight up Jordan Peterson style, like with a slideshow. So I have like 3 full like 90-minute lectures. And they've been like really fun and good, or I guess they're like 100 minutes is what I wrote down. But yeah, it's been fucking awesome. So this is at cjthex.com/lectures. Or subscribe to the mailing list at cjthex.com/subscribe to have first access to the tickets. And this again is like in the name of building like a business to be like completely independent, you know what I mean? To like make art and like enchant people and have the resources to do it without like signing your life away to a platform or like a label and stuff. Like in order to do that, you need to make a bunch of fucking money, you know what I mean?
The first.
The news is divided. Ground news puts it back together. so you can see how many sources are reporting on any breaking story, where they fall on the political spectrum, how reliable they are, and who owns them. Compare headlines and read full articles to see which details are prioritized, exaggerated, or left out entirely. Because the more we understand the media, the more we'll understand each other. Visit ground.news to learn more.